and people with a case of the Mondays.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
From Rogers Campground here in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Chilly and overcast today to follow up the severe amount of rain that we got yesterday. Of course, yesterday was the wedding here at Forkfest.
And great wedding, by the way.
It was a lot of fun. It was very enjoyable.
People, a lot of fun. I mean, you know, every event has its share of difficulties and that kind of a thing. And, you know, this was no exception. But overall, everybody had a great time. There was not anybody that I saw or bumped into who was like, man, this thing's, you know, nobody had anything negative to say about the whole thing. And the party went on until the wee hours, and good times were had.
Yeah, it was absolutely enjoyable. I loved it, and I think everyone who took part in it, had a good time. It was a very weird experience, though. I'm not, used to... I don't want to say being in charge because there's an anarchist wedding and no one is in charge, right? And that was especially true yesterday.
Yeah.
There were people asking me questions and I don't have the answer to this. Why are you asking me? I don't know.
Right.
The photographer asked me if I had seen someone else or something, or if I knew where they were supposed to set up. I was like, well, I'm an anarchist and the two people getting married are anarchists, so do whatever you want.
Right, yeah.
Just don't hurt anyone and don't take their stuff.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what ended up happening. Of course, the wedding was delayed by about 15 minutes. Right before the wedding was due to start, there was a medical incident.
I haven't said anything about this yet, but what I will say about it is that Nikki in her wedding gown was so stunning that one of the groomsmen had a little bit of an issue and had needed to be tended to by the paramedics.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it, but of course no one had seen Nikki at that point. Only the bridesmaids and I think myself had seen Nikki at that point. So this person hadn't seen her. Right. He had some sort of medical issue. And
I like my story better.
They had to call an ambulance, and we waited, and I had to make an announcement letting people know, hey, there's been a medical issue, so just be chill, be patient. And then, surprisingly, the ambulance got here within 15 minutes. Yeah. They were insanely fast. I've never seen an ambulance arrive that quickly inside of an actual city.
Right, yeah.
And here we are in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. They got here within 10 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
By 5:15, within 20 minutes of this happening, they had this guy loaded up and they had departed.
Yep.
And then the wedding proceeded as normal, except, of course, for the rain, which wasn't really an issue. I knew yesterday, as soon as the day started, that I was going to get wet all day long.
Yeah.
So I made peace with that very early on. But it was a candle lighting ceremony, and it perhaps was not the most put together of ideas, right? Well, it wasn't put together at all. It was Nikki gave me a script and goes, okay, here's this. And I didn't realize until yesterday that I was the sound engineer for the wedding, so to speak. I was the one tasked with setting everything. You provided the speakers,
yep.
And that. Then everyone just I got no direction about what to do.
Right, yeah.
I was told that there needed to be music after the ceremony.
Yep.
And the person who's doing that, frustratingly, the person whose phone was doing the intro music before the wedding and who started doing the music after the ceremony, apparently doesn't know how Bluetooth works.
Wandered away?
It wandered away repeatedly. And I'm like, well, first of all, you're at a wedding. If you don't need your phone, just set it down or put it in your pocket. But so that was frustrating. Every few minutes, the music just cut out and then it would return. It's I'm going to go find this guy and choke him. But it was otherwise very beautiful. I messed up a lot during the ceremony, as one is likely to do. It's not the satanic script that I would normally have used. Like I said, Nikki provided it.
Yeah.
I did my best to memorize it, but I've got a lot in my brain these days, and my ability to memorize things was not, at 100% capacity. Plus, I only got it a week ago.
Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare and memorize it.
It was me trying to memorize the lyrics for Broken Man.
Yeah, more or less.
Before we played it.
And it was a lot of talking. Probably among the most talking I've seen within a wedding ceremony, possibly in my whole life. And I haven't been to a lot of weddings, so.
How many have you performed?
I've only performed none. Yesterday.
So this was first. Okay,
yes.
so for your first one, I think it went off pretty well.
Yeah, I think it went fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there were no major issues. I went off script a number of times, and I wish I had gone off script more. But I didn't want to because I didn't want to feel like I was ruining Nikki's special day. You know,
Sure.
weddings are very important to people.
Yes.
And she gave me this script, so I tried to stick to it as much as possible. But that's not in my nature, right? I had a script for when at my sentencing hearing. Yeah. At my sentencing hearing, I had a script. When I spoke in favor of CACR 32, the secession bill here in New Hampshire, I had a script. On both of those occasions, I was like, yeah, I brought this thing to read, but I'm not going to read that. I'd rather just talk to you directly.
Right.
Because that's just more in my nature. As you mentioned, I'm more of an ad-libber. However, I didn't want to screw up her wedding. And in hindsight, Nikki knew what she was getting into when she asked me to be the officiator.
Oh, yeah.
So I should have been a little bit more loose in that regard and more willing to ad-lib instead of having to pause to read what I was supposed to say next. I should have just made something up. But all in all, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. The only real issue during the ceremony, of course, was that the candles didn't want to light.
Stay lit, yeah.
And that's really awkward when I'm standing up there saying, these candles are representative of your uniqueness, your autonomy, your individuality, and use them together. Oh, they went out as you got married. Sorry about that. Pay no mind to that, people. That's not symbolic of anything.
You should have got those trick candles that stay lit.
Someone had mentioned that, but you got to get them lit in the first place for those to work.
And of course, hindsight is always 20/20. You look back on a thing and you're like, oh, maybe if I'd have done that or whatever. You can't really critique yourself that hard. I think it was fine. Everybody had a good time. You did well for your having never done that before. I thought you showed some leadership. It was great.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, leadership doesn't come naturally to me, but I realized at one point that I was the one with the microphone, so and someone had to make an announcement. I was like,
I neglected to bring. I was going to bring a microphone and a cable for my speakers, so that folks, if they needed to say something or whatever, or during the toast, if they wanted a microphone, and I didn't bring it, and I would have had to dig a whole bunch of stuff out of the vehicle that I brought here.
Well, I had one. The issue with all of that was I severely overestimate the average person's ability to do anything in regard to technology. Like the guy who was controlling the music, in order to switch to the microphone, you had to manually press a button to switch it to auxiliary or mic input or whatever input, and then afterward switch back to Bluetooth. And then whoever's person was using the Bluetooth would have to reconnect to the device and resume playing the music.
Right.
And that is a big hurdle for people, apparently. Like, I had to step this dude through this repeatedly yesterday. Like, okay, now you have to reconnect afterward. Press this button 3 times, then reconnect, and then press the playlist again. It's like, that. It's so obvious to me that I wouldn't even think about giving those instructions to someone. So I tried to keep it as simple as possible. And that was why afterward I felt it was easier to have the microphone going to one particular speaker.
Agreed.
And the music going through another speaker. Quality and all of that crap aside, I got tired of trying to direct people to, like, either one, just give me the Bluetooth and tell me what playlist you want because I know how to do this stuff, or 2, we're going to find a different situation that requires minimal effort from me.
Yeah, when you're a wizard, it's difficult to explain your wizardry to non-wizards.
Yeah, but I mean, I wouldn't consider that, wizardry. You
don't consider it wizardry, but you live in tech, right?
Yeah, I guess.
Like compared to a regular person, their experience in tech is, basically 2-3 steps tops. Download an app, open the app, do what they got to do in the app, and then that's it. They don't, most folks don't comprehend networks and, overlap and, audio bleed, all that kind of stuff, radio interference, right? It's just not stuff that most folks comprehend.
And I like the guy, and I don't want to sound like I'm talking crap about him or anything like that. Like, we all have our skills and stuff, and technology is just not in his, forte, and that's fine. But I thought everyone used Bluetooth regularly, daily throughout their lives, right? I do this and don't even think about it. My car is Bluetooth. I get frustrated if I have to get in my car and press the play button on Spotify because it should connect automatically and start playing. So I'm just sort of used to technology being set up to work when I want it to work. And this is why I like older printers. Like, I had a printer in my studio that printed all the time, every time, no matter what. And all it did was print.
Yep.
versus one of these all-in-ones that you constantly...
Scanner, printer, fax machine. It'll, wash your unmentionables.
And they constantly lose their IP addresses. They have to be updated. You got about a 30-70 chance of it actually printing. If you let it sit there for 6 months without using it and you go to print, there's a really good chance it's just not going to print. And you're going to spend the next 3 hours troubleshooting what's wrong with it. So anyway, today's episode kind of disjointed. My dog is in a mood today, man. So she's now sitting up there in the hotel room because she's being very defensive and territorial, very uncooperative. I knew she was wound up, right? Like every day when I come down here, I try to walk her around the campground once to let her burn out that energy because she's a 2-year-old,
right?
And she's super excited. We didn't get that in today, but that's no excuse. When I tell her to stop barking, she knows to stop barking, and she just was not doing it. This is not her space.
Your dog's an anarchist, man.
Well, no, she doesn't get to be an anarchist. She's my dog, and she's going to do as I damn well tell her to do. That's the point of having a dog.
Anarchy dog.
My cats can be anarchists all they want, but my dog is not a cat and is not going to act like one. She's going to act like a dog, and she's normally very, very well behaved, but for whatever reason, it's because we didn't get that walk in. Yeah. So she's up in the hotel room now, and she's in timeout. And she's smart enough to know that she's in timeout, because literally as I took her away, she was barking and being uncooperative. I was like, nope, come on. So now she's sitting up there going, oh, I guess I probably should have listened, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
So if she keeps this up, she'll just get to come out for walks and playtime, and then she'll just spend her whole Porcfest in the hotel room. But obviously, it's my fault I didn't get that walk in with her. Yeah. We'll get that walk in today, and she'll be so much better afterwards. So, but for the time being, she hasn't got that walk, so she gets to play with cats. And she likes the cats, so she's fine. Yeah. But, she wants to be territorial. She can be territorial of the motel room. Like, bark at people who come in there, girl. You're doing great.
There are a number of dogs here, and folks are, all of the dogs so far, I haven't seen anything, in the meetings of other dogs or when people walk dogs by other dogs, not just yours, but other dogs. Like, all the dogs seem to be well-behaved and well-managed.
Yeah, and she's super chill. She's met most of the dogs here, hasn't had any real issue. There was someone at the wedding yesterday who had a dog that should not have been there. Mm-hmm. He was a bit aggressive and growly and barky at people.
Was it the little punting dog?
No, it was a larger one.
Okay.
I think he was a boxer, maybe. He may have been a boxer. Anyway, it seemed to me like if it was my dog, I wouldn't have brought him to an event that contained a bunch of dogs. Of course, by that point, I had walked Azria repeatedly, so she was extremely well-behaved, just sort of sat beside me the entire time. But that's not today. And again, this is all my fault for waking up late and then having miscellaneous issues that I had to deal with this morning, on top of a correction that I need to make about yesterday. I said that Roger Paxton was in charge of the Porcupine Freedom Festival in the year that Ian got banned. I'm pretty sure that part is true, but the way I said it, it made it sound like Roger Paxton was the one who got Ian banned. And that's not the case. And I did not mean to suggest that at all. Roger Paxton actually was the one who fought for Ian to get unbanned. Roger was the one who went through the meetings, the minutes of the Free State Project meetings to determine that Ian had only been banned for a year and not in perpetuity. So Roger was like single-handedly responsible for Ian being unbanned.
Right.
But I do believe he was the one who organized the festival on the year that Ian was banned.
Okay.
I could be mistaken. But that was my first year, and I didn't know what was going on. But Roger and Jessica did a Q&A at the pavilion down there. And I know that several people, notably Mikey, who now himself has been banned, held their feet to the flames over this and asked, I want to know, where is Ian Freeman? Why isn't Ian Freeman here?
Right.
Will you please tell us why Ian Freeman is not allowed at Porcfest? Right. Like, we're not answering that next question. Right.
Not answering that?
Yeah. They said something to that effect. And like I said, it was my first year here, so I didn't really even understand what was going on.
I wasn't here that year, so I can't speak to it personally.
But I knew that something was off, something wasn't right. And I think I knew of Ian at that point, but we had never actually spoken. But so Roger did not get Ian banned. And as it turns out, Carla Garrick was, in fact, one of the people who voted in favor of banning Ian. And I suggested that she didn't do anything authoritarian during her role as the Porcupine Freedom Fest organizer. And that's still true. She wasn't one of the organizers at the time that she voted to have Ian banned. But while she was an organizer, to my knowledge, she didn't do anything like... There is a long list of people who are now banned. Like last night, someone tried to come to Forkfest.
Yeah.
And there's no controversy around this person. This person hasn't been banned.
Right.
But he arrived late, and he insisted that he had a Porkfest ticket. but he was told that they weren't going to allow him to check in. And as far as I can tell, they thought that he was one of the people who had been banned and that he was trying to gate crash the event. That he was trying to check in early and then overstay his welcome during the Porcupine Freedom Festival. That's my best guess.
Yeah.
Of course, they're not going to say exactly what happened here. And it was Crosby, the owner of the campground. So you can't be like, Crosby, why aren't you letting this? It's his campground.
Yeah, I guess in the end, it's his campground. He can do what he wants.
Yeah. So the speculation is going around that now people being banned from the Porcupine Freedom Festival are inadvertently also banned from Forkfest.
Which is not the case, because Forkfest doesn't have a banned list. Forkfest doesn't have an organizer. Forkfest doesn't require ticketing.
Right, but Rogers Campground is owned by Crosby.
Yes.
And if Crosby is enforcing the Porcupine Freedom Festival ban list across the entire campground year-round, then getting banned from the Porcupine Freedom Festival is a ban from Rogers Campground. And I don't think that's right. And I don't think that's what was meant to be the case. I really think it was a misunderstanding, because right now, off the top of my head, Mikey, Rochelle Kelly, Footloose, Christopher Cantwell are all banned. And there's probably a few more. But no one in the Rogers Campground office has any idea what those 4 people look like.
There's no mug shots hanging up.
No, there aren't. And I've been in there repeat every day. I go in there to get 2 bags of ice, because when you're in the motel, you get 2 bags of ice, and I need those to keep stuff cool. And there's no mug shots of these people. They probably have a list with their names on it. Mm-hmm. So they have no way of knowing if someone banned tries to check in under a different name.
Right.
So I suspect that's what was going on.
Yeah, it seems to me the reasonable conclusion is that there was just some sort of misunderstanding.
But the guy has since been allowed in. He is now officially here. And amazingly, he did have a Porcupine Freedom Festival ticket. And I don't know why, being unable to pull up the email saying, hey, look, here's my ticket, wasn't sufficient.
Yeah.
But I guess in theory, like Mikey, the snack Jew, he calls himself the snack Jew, by the way, would be able to pull up his own Porkfest ticket and say, no, see, look, I'm allowed. Mikey, by the way, expected to arrive today. I was expecting him earlier, but he is arriving today, apparently. And, man, that's going to be interesting. I neither condone nor condemn this. I am just reporting on it. I did initially offer him a space here at RV46 at the Free Talk Live site. I did. I said, hey, if you want to set your vending stuff up here at the FTL site, go for it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make sure it's safe or anything. It'll be as safe as it is anywhere else, but you're welcome to set it up here. I didn't say during Forkfest only, but I also did not say I would have to make you take it down for the Porcupine Freedom Festival, right? He doesn't have to be here. His stall is entirely unmanned.
Yeah.
In theory, he could set his stuff up, leave, and then come back on the 26th and collect his money.
Right, yeah.
I doubt he would do that, and I tend to think it would be unwise to leave these buckets of cash laying around for that length of time.
He does have the self-checkout system, though.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all self-serve. I'm interested. I brought some new flags this year to the FTL site.
I see that. I'm really digging the pentagram.
Yes, that is the Church of Satan emblem. And, of course, behind you is an LGBTQ pride flag. I'm going to move that one because right now it's partially covering up the Free Talk Live sign, but it's going to require me doing a lot of work. And I wanted to get the show started recording before I got into any of that stuff because I like having time to wake up and get my day going before I do a bunch of, physical stuff. So I suspect that LGBTQ sign will disappear at some point. I'm so convinced this is going to happen that I want to ask Matt Roach for a trail cam.
Oh, I see.
So that we can point it at it because it's not going to survive. And there's a reason I hung it right there at the front, right? Instead of the one over here on the side that people probably aren't going to. Plus, it's a rainbow. It's going to get noticed. And some butthurt conservative is going to do something about it. Or if it doesn't get stolen, it's going to get vandalized and slashed with knives or something like that. I'm willing to bet
I hope not. That
a
seems...
25er gold back that happens. Of course, no one's going to take that bet, but I'm willing to bet that.
Seems like something that, shouldn't happen amongst a crew of libertarians.
Not everyone here is a libertarian.
I understand, but still,
and that's part of
the non-aggression principle should permeate the campground.
It should, but with the Porcupine Freedom Festival inviting people who are specifically not libertarians, and some of them explicitly threatening violence.
Maybe RFK will come over here and slash it.
I doubt that RFK will, but Vivek might.
One of his
Maj
goons.
might.
Yeah.
Or any of the other conservatarians who like Maj might do it. And I will be sad to see that happens, but this flag wouldn't be here if it wasn't for all of the conservatives trying to make trans people and LGBTQ people feel unwelcome throughout the United States. I'm going to make them feel unwelcome at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. We've never flown an LGBT flag here. Why would we? We've never flown a flag of Satan here. Of course, why would we?
Well, because you're here.
Well, yeah, but I've been here for 7 years now, right? And I've been here at the FTL site for
actually
4 or
surprised
5 years.
the pentagram flag hasn't been here the whole time since I've known you.
Yeah, I kind of am too. Other people fly them around here, though, and I like up here last year, up here in the campground, people are beginning to roll it, and it's fantastic to watch. People are beginning to set up.
Yep.
I'm surprised that there aren't more people here. Like the Porcupine Freedom Festival, it starts tomorrow, and the Wormtown guys have not made it yet. They have a big thing, a big tent that they have to set up, and they're not here.
Yeah, well, and the tent where I'm hosting my EP thing, listening party, pre-release thing, we haven't set it up yet, so whenever we're done doing this show, hopefully the things that are necessary arrive, and I've got some extra people to help put it up, and then we can get that thing going. But it's still on schedule, as far as I know, for 8:30 p.m. If you're listening to this right now, it's probably already happened and you missed it.
Not yet. If you're listening to this right now, then it's happening in about an hour.
Well, I mean, if you're listening to the recording on Free Talk Live.
Right.
Right.
Then it'll happen in about an hour. This should play tonight.
Oh, okay. I thought this was another day.
It might have to be put off another day.
I still don't know what day it is, really.
I'm anticipating that we'll be able to finish the full show at before 4 or 5 o'clock and get it uploaded and get it played on live tonight.
Okay.
I don't know. I could be wrong, but my guess is that. But there are people beginning to roll in. I'm surprised, again, that the Wormtown guys aren't here because they have a lot of stuff to set up. But maybe I haven't been to the pre-party at the Porcupine Freedom Festival in quite a while.
Yeah.
Because I usually stay for Forkfest after. For the last, 3 years? That's what I did?
Yeah,
Maybe
that's what I've been
years?
doing, too. Because Forkfest was after the Porcupine Freedom Festival the previous years. This year it moved back to the front of it, the pre-funk. So it's a bit different experience for me, anyway.
It is. I remember coming to the Porcupine Freedom Festival beforehand, but I don't remember what it was like watching it set up. I would have expected all of the big vendors to be here and to be already set up by this point so that when the doors open tomorrow, they're good to go to start vending. But that's not the case.
It's right now, it's afternoon, and there are people rolling in that weren't here yesterday, so I expect as we sit here and do the show, we'll see more and more people roll in throughout the afternoon.
Maybe you're coming in, and of course you can drop by and hang out with us at RB46 here, because we're going to be here all the way to the 5th. And of course, again, tonight, if you're still here, or it already happened, we'll talk more about that. There's more coming up here from Roger. It is Talk Live.
Excuse me, is this where I get a license to start a new business?
I wouldn't be hasty. You have to get a license to go out of business, too,
Oh, well, look, I've invented this little anti-gravity machine, see?
Oh, is that why you're walking 2 inches above the floor?
Oh, yes, it's very comfortable. It saves on shoe leather.
Yeah, well, you have to fill out these forms and report to the Human Services Department of Manpower Orientation and register with the Fair Employment Practice Commission, the Wage and Hour Division of the Employment Standards Administration, the State Sales and Income Tax Division, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Social Security Administration of the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, and, of course, OSHA.
OSHA? I thought that was a little town in Wisconsin.
You'll find out. Say, floating around like that could be dangerous. Have you checked with the Consumer Product Safety Commission?
Well, not yet.
Come to think of it, you actually are flying, aren't you? Look, you need to go over to the Federal Aviation Administration and the Transportation...
It's very hard to get anything done these days if you're in business, but free enterprise built this country. Think what could happen if we don't keep it free. A public service of this station and the Center for the Defense of Free Enterprise, Bellevue, Washington.
We just can't have people floating about unregulated,
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
The final day of Forkfest here at Rogers Campground. Well, it depends on how you look at it, really. Because ever since the Porcupine Freedom Festival decentralized, Forkfest has been this thing that takes place where Forkfest is magical, right? It is whatever and wherever and however and whenever you want it to be.
Schrodinger's festival.
It is.
If you don't observe it, it doesn't exist. But as soon as you do observe it, it exists.
So there are good arguments to make that the entire campground is Forkfest from June the 15th through June the 25th.
Yep.
And that the Porcupine Freedom Festival simply overlaps with Forkfest during 7 of those days, and that the Porcupine Freedom Festival is by and large something that takes place, quote, at the bottom of the hill.
Right.
And I know that the Porcupine Freedom Festival, they really hate that description of things, but there's so much controversy around this year's Porcupine Freedom Festival that, like, I mean, that's predicted, right? It's a bunch of libertarians, and libertarians love infighting. That's one of the reasons that Free Talk Live is able to exist, right? We will find the most minor nuance.
And pick it apart.
Yes. Like
1,000 different ways.
A few weeks ago, Bonnie, Ian, and I got into a lengthy, like it took up an entire segment discussion about what is and isn't aggression, and whether tapping someone on the shoulder in public constituted aggression.
Oh, when you're like, hey, man.
Yeah.
Right, and you tap somebody.
And of course, Ian and I's position was that, like, technically, literally, touching someone without their consent is aggression, right? It doesn't matter that you're not hurting them.
Well, and like legally too, like that's assault.
Yeah, I guess it would be.
You know, I mean, like, not to me, but in the strictest adherence to the legal terminology, touching someone without their consent is assault.
That's literally true. And the point that Bonnie made was that, no, it's not assault, because by going into public, you acknowledge, you consent to the possibility that someone might touch you. And it was sort of a social contract-y argument, except it wasn't, obviously. She never would argue for a social contract, but
Sure.
I don't think she's necessarily wrong. Going out in public, you do sort of consent to interact with people to some extent. And I don't know how else you could characterize things, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But anyway, that's what we did. Not 3 hour argument, but like full segment long argument about what is and isn't aggression. Of course, we have callers who love doing this. Skeeter in particular. Good Lord.
Skylar?
Man.
Scooter?
Yeah, Skeeter's what?
Yeah, no,
okay.
I don't call him his actual.
Okay. Well, I do, and
because he has many different names. He is called under many different. He's called as Brian. He's called as.
Has he?
Yeah,
Okay.
a couple of different names, and so I know exactly who he is. And you can usually tell because at some point during his call, he seems to whine a little bit.
He whines the entire time. That's all he does. He's like David from New Mexico. He's got a stick up his rear, and all he wants to do is call and rehash and tell us how upset he is about that stick. And it's like, dude, just pull it out, and we can carry on instead of arguing about something that happened 2 or 3 weeks ago.
I don't think he's aware that he can pull it out.
I guess not, right? But that all started because he wanted to call in and he said, "Yo, you guys are being libertarians, saying that, you stand by principles, and I object.
Yeah.
What is aggression?" And that was how it sort of began. And I don't remember exactly what the discussion was said after that, because this was like 3 weeks ago.
Sure.
And it's a weird situation, these parasocial relationships that we have with some of our listeners and some of our callers. Like Ricky, he called in recently and said, "Well, you know me, brother Ian." And Ian goes, "No, Ricky, I don't know you.
Right, yeah, exactly.
You're just a caller who calls it. You hear us for 3 hours a day, but we hear you for maybe 3 minutes.
Right.
And we don't know you. You know us, right? That's the nature of the parasocial relationship. It's all one direction.
Yeah.
But people like Ricky and Skeeter and stuff because they listen to the show regular, and that's great. We love that. But you've got to keep that perspective that we don't know you, right? I feel like we know Sarah from New Mexico pretty well, right? But she's been a chronic caller for years.
That's true. Decades, maybe. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not decades, but
Maybe a
one.
decade.
Yeah, maybe 1 decade.
But we don't know our callers generally. Some of them like Alu Axelman or Dave Ridley. Yeah, we know you because you're libertarians living here in New Hampshire.
Right, and if you have some, libertarian thing going on, I lose an author, Ernie does his show, right, all that kind of stuff. So, we know those folks.
Ernie and his love bus arrived yesterday. Actually, he's moved. He's normally back there in the campground, but this year he's
a little more up front.
Yeah, he's like right here, right outside of Agora Valley. I think right about where Little Zoe's normally is, but they're usually in a different aisle.
Nothing but love, Ernie.
Yeah, Little Zoe's is not here yet. I believe your poles have arrived.
Oh, nice.
For the big army tent that you are putting up for the airing of your album tonight, the debut of your album. That's happening at 8:30. And I don't know if you're listening here, it is about to happen. So stop the show and play it later. We do have a podcast for a reason. And come to RV47 and listen to the airing of Captain's new EP.
I've put a bunch of work into it too, so I do a horrible job at really advertising all of the details. Some of the things that I can tell you is there are 3 videos. I was only intending to make 1 music video, and I did make one, and it came out very professionally.
Nice.
I had some help from Vincent Moore, former co-host here on Free Talk Live, who is a video guy. He went to school for all that stuff. Vincent was one of the first people to acknowledge and enjoy. He literally sought out some of my previously made music and was like, "I really like this stuff. Can I have more?" And asked me for links to other stuff, and I sent him all that stuff.
Fantastic.
So I wanted somebody who not only had the skills to do the video editing, but was enthusiastic about it as well.
Right, that's ideal. And that's one of the reasons that we love Riley Blake so much. The person who does the FTL Digest, he does this it's a work of passion for him because he loves the show.
Yeah. I have to give a shout out to Riley, too, for doing the digest version of Beard Talk Live.
Okay, nice.
And you can find that on beard.freetalklive.com. I recently acquired beardtalklive.com and pointed it to Resolve at that same website, so either address you go to. But he does an introduction to the digest version of Beard Talk Live.
He does that for the FTL digest.
That is a must-hear. It's different than what he does for FTL.
Well, yeah.
We do a thing that I can't say on the radio, so I'm not going to say it, but we do a thing on Beard Talk Live, and he does his own version of it as an introduction to the digest version of Beard Talk Live. So if you haven't heard it, go seek that out. Riley, you the man. Thank you so much for your work.
Yeah, Riley is awesome. He deserves so much props for what he does. And I don't know how Riley is blind, and he does this. He edits the digest, and he clips it, and he makes it listenable and good. He does it without the ability to see.
Right, and you and I have both done software editing of audio.
Yeah, I do audio auditing every day here.
Yeah, you're doing it right now.
I can see the files.
Right, and so I can't imagine how you would do that. I know he has special gear that they use for folks who don't have sight, but I don't understand how the interface works and how he knows where he's at, how he drops markers for stuff. I have no idea, but kudos to him for figuring it out.
Yep. So if you want to donate to the FDL Digest, if you prefer that version of the show, and I kind of do, because Free Talk Live is a long show, right? It boils down to about 2 hours of audio each day, but if you're watching the video, then it's effectively 3 hours, or if you're listening on the radio, it's 3 hours, and that's 21 hours of content every week.
Yep.
That's a lot of content. And one of the things I tried stressing to Mark recently, because Mark wanted to do this thing and get people to make more videos or whatever, I'm like, Mark, we don't need more content. We do more content than any other show on the planet. We put out 21 hours.
21 hours is a lot. Most podcasts are doing an hour, 2 hours tops.
Most of it, I looked it up. It's 30 minutes is about the average podcast, and they do one episode a week on average. And we do 21 hours a week on average. Well, if you count the podcast, then it's 14 hours a week, but that's still 28 times more content than any other podcast. Like, you have to really, really love Free Talk Live to listen to every episode of the podcast.
And if you do, thank you.
Yeah, but I think that's a tall ask, right? There's a podcast that I listen to that I absolutely love called Data Over Dogma, and it's about 30 minutes long, and it airs once a week. And that's what I'm used to finding out of podcasts.
So you said Data Over Dogma, and now I have a picture of Brent Spiner sitting down to watch a Kevin Smith movie.
Brent Spiner. I know that name.
He played Data on Star Trek.
Oh, yes.
So Data sitting down to watch Kevin Smith Dogma?
I'm going to shoot that idea to them because I support them on Patreon. One of the guys who created is Dan McClellan, who I've talked about repeatedly here on the show. He's a religious scholar and a Mormon, and he's an expert on the Old Testament and just the Bible and history in general. And for whatever reason, I mean, because I grew up steeped in this stuff and it traumatized me and affected me for the rest of my life.
Sure.
I find the subject of Christianity and Christian history tremendously fascinating. Like that will, if I get the opportunity to order specific books while I'm in prison, those will be among the ones I mostly order.
Okay. You hear that, everybody?
Well, I expect other people to buy me other stuff, so I don't know what's going to happen when I'm in prison. What was that clock at now? 8 days?
9 days, 51 minutes, and 11 seconds.
Yeah, it's getting there, man. That's the day, that's the hour upon which I go to prison. Every time my phone rings and it's an unrecognized number, I'm like, is this it? Is this the call? Is this the one that's going to tell me where I'm going?
I don't envy you, man. I can't even imagine what that's like to just be waiting on that.
It's not something, I'm almost in a state of denial about it, right? And I know it's going to happen, and I know it's coming, and it's barely a week away, but it's not something that is actively in my brain. It's always in the back of my mind, but it's never like actively taking up my thoughts.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and it probably won't settle in until after you're inside and, a couple days go by. You get, some time to yourself, so to speak.
That is going to be rough. I did spend some time this morning thinking about that, and that was one of the reasons that, that was one of the minor issues I had this morning, is that I got deeply involved in thinking about the reality of what it's going to literally be like to get checked in and to be assigned to a cell. And if I'm put in a men's prison, then my cellmate is going to hate that. He's going to hate sharing a room with me, because the other guys are just going to give him crap about it. Like, you're staying with that freaking weirdo over there. It sucks for you. And like, that's not going to be a good place for me.
It is entirely possible that there's some other weirdo already in prison that they bunk you up with.
That's true. And I don't know if that's better or worse. And then it's not any better, as we mentioned yesterday, for me to go to women's prison where I have exactly the same issue.
They don't have a weirdo section in prison?
They don't, because this is what a lot of people suggested. Well, I don't know why they don't just take all the trans people and put them in a special trans prison. Because that's discrimination and it's segregation and it's not right to do. That's like saying take all the gay people or take all the black people or whatever and put them in their own separate prison.
But usually governments don't care about that.
They do if the public does.
I guess if the public can make some sort of a stink or a spectacle out of it, the state's not going to want to do it.
So it's going to be interesting to see how all of this shakes out. And I should know sometime this week. And as soon as I know, I will be talking about it here on Free Talk Live. Actually, as soon as I know, I'll be reading about it and reading about the prison and all that stuff. But for those who have not been following the news, Ian's sentencing hearing was postponed an additional month.
Till August something?
I think the 17th at 10 a.m. I could be wrong on the date, but it's the same day of the month, only in August instead of July.
So I think it is the 17th, yeah.
And that's going to take place at 10 a.m. And I'm torn on whether I think it's going to get pushed back again.
I think it will, and the only reason I think it will is because there's some unresolved stuff with the judge that I think needs to happen before sentencing can commence. That's only if the state follows their own, things that they've written down that they're supposed to do. And so my guess is that there's going to be some more legal hoops to jump through before they can proceed with the actual sentencing. But who knows? I mean, it's the government. In
the meantime, of course, you can go to letters.freetalklive.com, and there you can find step-by-step instructions on what you can do to help Ian, because as we mentioned, I'm going to prison, but that doesn't mean Ian is going to prison, right? They could very well give Ian, probation or supervised release with time served or whatever.
Right.
I don't think it's impossible that they sentence Ian in a lesser way than they did me, right? And I wouldn't begrudge him for that, obviously. I'm hoping he doesn't go to prison. I'm hoping he's not sentenced to prison. They're like, hey, this guy, he's just so influential.
Yeah.
And he's such a positive figure in his community that we just cannot justify putting him in prison. Maybe house arrest for 2 years, and who knows? The possibilities are endless. There's no reason for the government to resort to prison as its default punishment.
Yeah, especially for supposed crimes where there are no victims. In other words, no property and no people were hurt. This is acknowledged by the federal government themselves that there is no victim. Yet, they're trying to put him in a cage.
Well, I'm not sure they acknowledge that there is no victim. I thought near the end and near the beginning of the trial, they were making out like Ian did have some sort of connection with the fraudsters.
No, the judge said, the harm is the harm. What does that mean?
He did say that during my sentencing hearing.
That? Oh, that was during... Oh, maybe I'm confusing.
He did, well, because the prosecutors were arguing that what I was doing was money laundering. And, of course, my attorney was like, no, look, for it to be money laundering, you have to know that the money is from illegal proceeds.
So it's the same judge in yours and his case. And for a judge to say something as nonsensical as the harm is the harm, it's like, no, dude, harm needs to be proven. Right? The prosecution needed to bring evidence that shows that a person or a piece of property was harmed, which they did not do.
No, but they did. Well, they sort of did. They did bring out, evidence that people were harmed. They just did not make the connection to Ian.
Right.
Right. They had the one guy there who bought, I think, $640,000 worth of Bitcoin from me. Harold is his name. Mm-hmm. And I had no idea. This is one of the big sore points I had with this whole sentencing thing. The prosecutors in their sentencing memorandum said, Arya has shown no remorse for the victims who lost money by buying Bitcoin from her. And as I read them, I'm like, you evil, evil monsters. This is the first I'm hearing of any people being defrauded and buying Bitcoin from me.
Right.
I knew this had happened with Ian, but I don't know how many of my customers were legitimate people just trying to buy Bitcoin and how many of them were victims of fraud. Right. And the prosecutors didn't email me and tell me this. They didn't call me and tell me this. They didn't tell my attorney. How in the hell was I supposed to know that some of the people who bought Bitcoin from me turned out to be the victims of fraud? No one told me this. How can I possibly show remorse for something that I don't know about?
Well, and if you apply the state's logic to really anything else, right? So let's say there's some guy who's trying to defraud an old lady out of, Coca-Cola Classic, right?
Okay.
And so the old lady is like, okay, yes, I'll get some Coca-Cola Classic for you. And she goes down to the convenience store and buys some Coca-Cola Classic and gives it to the guy and is out that amount of money, right? Do the feds prosecute the convenience store for selling the Coca-Cola Classic? No, they don't. And that's their logic. That's what they're doing to both you and Ian and the rest of the Crypto Six, is they're prosecuting you for providing a product to somebody who was a willing customer, right, who jumped through all of the, like, I think you guys were more stringent than actual KYC with your procedures. So,
demonstrably
like,
so. Everyone who bought Bitcoin from us had to make a handwritten letter stating their name. Arya DeMezzo, am buying X amount of Bitcoin from Ian Freeman in the amount of this USD via wire transfer on this day. They had to sign it. They had to take a picture of themselves with the note.
Yep.
And provide us with an ID so we could look at that person, look at the note, look at the ID, and verify that, yes, this person is intentionally buying this amount of Bitcoin from me.
Now, I've gone through actual KYC on a crypto exchange.
Right.
And I found it to be less strict than what you and Ian were requiring of the customers who purchased Bitcoin from you.
Yes, for the most part, all I've ever had to do was provide my ID and usually a bill or something like that.
I've only had to enter, like name and, that kind of stuff, and then upload a picture of my driver's license.
That's usually how it started, but at a certain point, they were requiring more from me. Like,
I think I had to put in a mailing address, too.
I had to provide a proof of source of funds to Kraken at one point.
Wow.
And just all sorts of crap. But at that point, they have a threshold. I was doing the Kraken Pro, first of all, so I wasn't just a normal personal account. Okay. So I had to, I had bought maybe $200,000 worth of Bitcoin from them at that point, and they were like, hey, look, we want to know, where is this $200,000 coming from? So I had a bookkeeper write something up and get this in, like, this is the case, and this is the money, and this is all fine. And they were like, okay, this is fine, this checks out. But ultimately, Kraken closed my account anyway. Coinbase closed my account anyway. Coinbase didn't close my account until after the hearing. It's going to be I'm so thankful to look around and see the Bitcoin vending machines that are proliferated throughout New Hampshire, at least, and the United States in general, because none of these exchanges like Coinbase and Binance and Kraken, if they survive the onslaught from the U.S. government.
We'll see if that happens.
They're never going to do business with me. I'm a known Bitcoin salesperson. They know that. I was a cryptocurrency exchange. I was a competitor. Why would they do business with me? So it's going to be very difficult going forward for me to acquire cryptocurrency, except through the Coinstar machines and the random Bitcoin vending machines that are around. But on that subject, right, there are Bitcoin vending machines everywhere. There's even one here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival, or if there isn't right now, there will be. There's one here every year. And I got into a discussion last year with the guy about this. All of his paperwork is in order. He's good to go. But one of the people who wrote a letter on Ian's behalf also had all of their paperwork in order.
Okay.
We had on Risen from, I think he works on Ethereum, on the show a few weeks ago, and he had all of his paperwork in order. His was a really interesting conversation because I think he pled guilty to operating an unlicensed money transmitting business, and he was sentenced to, I want to say it was 12 months, and ultimately he served about 6 months of that. And that's what I would like to serve if I'm going to serve any money. I'm sentenced to 18 months, and it varies, right, based on what I read on any given day, how long I think I'm going to be in prison.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm leaning toward 12 to 15 months. But because of the First Step Act and these other things, previously, prior to the First Step Act, in order to...
I don't even know what that is.
It came about in 2021. But prior to it, in order to get released early, the warden of the prison had to speak up on your behalf and try to get you released early.
Whoa.
The First Step Act removes that hurdle from it, where you just sort of can apply for it automatically.
Okay.
Or whatever. I don't know the exact process. Most people don't know the exact process. You don't learn these things until you're there in prison.
Sure.
But a lot of it has to do with getting a college degree or studying, or there's all sorts of programs that you can get involved in. I'm sort of looking forward to that. The problem is, if I was going to get another degree right now, it would be in like ancient religious studies, honestly, because that's the topic I'm most interested in, that I would want to seriously learn more about. I would say physics, but I remember majoring in that, and I remember how much I hated the calculus. I love the calculus, actually. It's what taught me how elegant calculus and mathematics really are.
That's beyond me, man. I was told there would be no math.
Right, fair enough. But I'm not good at it, and I didn't like having to do it. So that was why I switched out of majoring in physics. Anyway.
Dude, I failed algebra twice. But I aced geometry. Because if it's tangible, I get it. If it's this sort of like, vague, cloudy mathematics, sort of in the sky, that you have to sort of kind of guess, I guess, is what I'm getting at with algebra, right? It's all this, it's all fictional probabilities and mathematics in there. So if I can't have a practical application for it, it just sort of escapes me.
Fair enough. But the difference with calculus is that it gives you real-world cases for it. So calculus was the point at which math stopped being that vague theoretical thing for me, and it started becoming something representative of the actual real world.
Okay.
But it was super complicated and not much fun. And, of course, you're not getting a degree in any sort of physics, general relativity or quantum theory or whatever, or acoustic. The school that I went to had two physics programs. One was general relativity, and the other was an acoustic physics program.
Yeah.
But you're not getting a degree in that in prison. In prison, your options, you can probably get a 2-year degree, an associate's or a bachelor's, but like the physics and the biblical study things, those are master's and bachelor's levels of specificity, and I guess I could get the associates and then come out and try to finish, but I don't know what I'm going to find when I get out of prison.
Right.
Artificial intelligence is going to take off in the near future. Cryptocurrency is going to do its own thing. I don't know what's going to happen with Ian and how Free Talk Live is going to be when I get out, or where Mark will be. So, I have no ability to plan what life is going to be like afterward. But there's more coming up here, because I know what tomorrow is going to be like here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival. Come hang out with us. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 2 up next after the news, here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in New York, I'm William Denslow with the Week in Review. Donald Trump pleaded not guilty this week to criminal charges, alleging he retained dozens of classified documents after leaving office in 2021. The former US president was arraigned on Tuesday in Miami, facing 37 counts in a federal investigation, including conspiracy and obstruction of justice. Sally Patterson reports from near the courthouse.
The proceedings were over within a matter of minutes. After arriving at the Miami courthouse, Donald Trump was booked and fingerprinted, but a mugshot wasn't deemed necessary as he's not seen as a flight risk. The former president didn't even speak directly to the judge. Instead, his lawyer entered the not guilty plea on his behalf. He's vowed not to end his presidential ambitions, even if convicted.
At least 78 people died after a packed fishing boat capsized about 50 miles off the coast of Greece on Wednesday. Giles Gibson has more from Rome.
Officials say the boat, which had set off from the coast of Libya, declined assistance from the Greek Coast Guard because it was trying to reach Italy. The Greek government has previously been accused of pushing migrant boats back from its waters, though it says its policies are tough but fair. Giles Gibson, Rome.
Former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson has been found guilty of deliberately and repeatedly misleading Parliament. The long-awaited findings were published in a report by a group of MPs over the Partygate scandal, where social gatherings were held in Downing Street during the pandemic lockdowns. The reports caused yet more internal rifts within the ruling Conservative Party, as John Beaver reports from the UK.
The cross-party group of MPs haven't held back in their criticism of Boris Johnson. They accused the former Prime Minister of repeated contempts of Parliament, saying he deliberately misled the Commons on a number of occasions. The report comes at the end of an investigation into the former Prime Minister's knowledge of and involvement in a number of parties that took place in Downing Street. When they happened, they were in breach of the government's own strict pandemic guidelines put in place to limit the spread of COVID-19. He's called it a political assassination, a witch hunt, and has criticised the report's authors, his own Conservative Party, and current Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
Gale force winds and heavy rains have impacted coastal parts of northwest India and southern Pakistan after a cyclone made landfall on Thursday. Officials have evacuated roughly 100,000 people. And Italy marked the death of former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi with a state funeral in Milan. After making a fortune in real estate and broadcasting, Berlusconi first became Prime Minister in the mid-90s, but was dogged by sex and corruption scandals. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, remembering the British actress and politician Glenda Jackson, whose death was announced on Thursday at the age of 87. In an acting career that lasted 6 decades, she won 2 Oscars, 3 Emmys, 2 BAFTAs and a Tony Award, honoured for films including Women in Love, A Touch of Class and Queen Elizabeth I in the BBC's Elizabeth R. In her 50s, she turned to politics, becoming a firebrand parliamentarian for Britain's Labour Party. She returned to the stage at the age of 80, and in an appearance last year at the British Film Institute, was asked if she worried that opportunities for women in acting and politics were slipping backwards.
I never really noticed it going forward, but I'm... But I say that more as a female than as a working class female, I have to say. And we're still looking at a situation where contemporary dramatists find women boring. I mean, they are rarely, if ever, the central driving engine of what the writer has decided to explore. And I find that utterly bewildering. Well, I don't find it bewildering, I just bitch about it a lot.
Glenda Jackson recently completed a new film alongside Michael Caine. On Thursday, he described her as one of our greatest movie actresses. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
FSN is an independent source of news for TV, radio and digital networks worldwide. You can find more of our minute-by-minute updates on Twitter. Follow us there at Feature Story. And we have a wealth of audio and video stories from our global news bureaus on Facebook. You can find us there by following Feature Story News. Stay tuned for further updates right here. But for now, that's the latest Feature Story News. William Denslow reporting.
NASA announced the discovery of a mile-wide asteroid this week that could potentially trigger a global level of extinction, forcing upscale fashion retailer Nordstrom out of business. Researchers confirm that the celestial object is traveling at speeds exceeding 29,000 miles per hour, threatening to slam into the planet with more than 1 million megatons of force, enough to jeopardize operations at all 117 full-line Nordstrom locations.
Unless we can find some way to divert or intercept the asteroid, all 7 billion people on Earth, including all 62,500 Nordstrom employees, may die. Even if the asteroid breaks into smaller pieces upon entering to the atmosphere, a death toll as low as several hundred million could still slow foot traffic in stores and reduce online orders from Nordstrom's subsidiary Hot Look.
Humanity is surprised it still hasn't figured out an alternative to letting power-hungry assholes decide everything. And a magical office worker is able to turn everything he touches into more work for his colleagues.
This is the Onion News Network.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live on this Sunday edition of the show. It may be the Monday edition of the show. I mean, it all varies. I don't know what day it is that you're actually listening to this. Plus, you could be listening to the podcast on any day, so I don't know what day it is, but this is the Sunday for us.
It's my theme for Forkfest and Porcfest.
What day is it?
I don't know what day it is.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I usually have a better idea of what day it is as we first get here.
It's pretty easy to gauge the beginning and the end, right? You don't really need to know what day it is in between, near as I can tell, unless you're strictly adhering to the schedule. There's somebody that you want to see on, like, Tuesday at 2 o'clock or whatever, that kind of a thing. Outside of that, you can just sort of exist without keeping time.
Yeah, I sort of thought today was Monday, and I didn't know what day yesterday was. It just never occurred to me that the wedding was on Saturday, so I thought yesterday was Sunday all day, and it was all very weird. Because, I mean, time does sort of cease to exist here at Rogers Campground during these festivals.
It's been my experience. Every time I come here, as soon as I get here, I just sort of feel this like, I'm here, this relief, and then I just stop paying attention to the time mostly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good approach.
Unless, of course, it's like, we have to go into town before X closes, because in town things close pretty early.
Right. On that note, I think I'm probably going to hit Smoky Teas tonight for dinner. I ended up doing, yesterday was the reception, so that's what I did for dinner. Yeah. But before that, of course, there were Scorpios, and, of course, got to visit House of Pizza here. They initially took Goldbacks 3 years ago, I think it was.
Myself, Mr. Kahuna, our sometimes co-host, occasionally, we went there and we spent Goldbacks on pizza.
When?
3 years ago. Okay,
yeah. I don't think they still do it, which is understandable. Like, we were the only ones who used gold there.
Yeah.
For the same reason, the restaurant at the Cabot, which has now closed, I forget what it was called, but there was a restaurant there, and they took cryptocurrency because every year, Ian would come here and he would sell them on it, and they would end up... At some point, they were willing to accept cryptocurrency, but it only happened once a year. And that was during the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and they may do it repeatedly during that year, but it was only that one time out of the year. So they never had anyone who was trained to do it. Every time we went there, we had to retrain their staff on doing it, and eventually they just stopped.
Right.
Plus, we're up here in the mountains of Lancaster. In the mountains of New Hampshire, so there's not a whole lot of business that they would have gotten anyway. And ultimately, they closed down, and now they don't take cryptocurrency or USD because they're no longer open. And the same issue with the House of Pizza here in Lancaster. They took Goldbacks, but no one ever went there to spend Goldbacks, so they ultimately just stopped. And this is the issue we have with trying to sell these people on the idea of cryptocurrency and Goldbacks. And when you go to like one of these Bitcoin accepting maps, I think maps.bitcoin.com maybe.
Yeah.
But when you go to them, it shows a lot of places that accept cryptocurrency. But when you call them or when you visit them, it turns out that they don't actually accept a cryptocurrency because someone will talk them into it and they'll do it once and then they'll just never go back.
Yeah. And they'll get put on the map because of that one transaction.
Right.
Yeah.
And this happens a lot with the ones in Miami. Miami, the Bitcoin capital, you can't spend crypto there.
This is what you're describing, though, is the illustration that a community is necessary for adoption.
Yes.
And, the more folks that we can get coming to New Hampshire that are using cryptocurrency and goldbacks, the more community we can build, the more people will begin accepting it, and the more we can throw the bird in the general direction of the government.
And on the subject of cryptocurrency, I want to tell you about Dash. They have a new killer app that Bonnie was tweeting about the other day as a lifesaver with Bitcoin fees being so high. Of course, Dash is lightning fast. It's a little bit faster than Bitcoin Cash, instantaneous transactions, very cheap transactions. I think it's like 0.001 Dash per transaction, which is really good because Bitcoin can push $5, $10, $20 per transaction. But Dash is designed to actually be used as a cryptocurrency, and that's tremendously valuable. Most of the places here at the Porcupine Freedom Festival will take Dash. I don't know if any of them are using Dash Direct, though. And that's the killer app that Dash has. I've
been using it for a while now, and it's great.
You can shop at like 180,000 different locations using this app and using Dash to make purchases, and you get discounts ranging from like 1% all the way up to 8 or 9% just for using Dash. It's really awesome. And I want to say thank you to the people at Dash for making that happen and for sponsoring the show. They give us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. You can find out more about them at dash.org, I think is the website. It might also be dash.com, or just go to your favorite search engine and look up Dash cryptocurrency, because I don't remember the name of the website off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it was dash.org.
Yeah.
But that's, dash.org. Thank you to the Decentralized Autonomous Organization over at Dash for giving us that 32 Dash per month for promoting them on the air.
If you're a gift giver and you like giving gift cards, Dash Direct is also great for that, because you can give a virtual gift card in, reasonable amounts, and nearly any amount you can think of.
Bitcoin.com. There's a number of ways to get gift cards with cryptocurrency, and I like those, but those are obviously not ideal, right? Obviously, the ideal is to be able to use cryptocurrency directly at the business, and then they use the cryptocurrency to pay their suppliers. We don't have that hurdle crossed yet. And in order to cross that hurdle, we're going to have tens of thousands of locations throughout the U.S. accepting cryptocurrency, so that they can put pressure on like Cisco and other vending companies to actually sell them for cryptocurrency. Until then, they have to have some amount of cash to give their suppliers, so they can. So it's great that Local Burger in Keene, they no longer accept cryptocurrency, but it's great that they accepted crypto, right? But if they want to buy more beef and buns and stuff, they've got to use cash.
Yep.
So that's the real hurdle that has to be crossed for the cryptocurrency people, is to ask the vendors that you're dealing with if they're willing to accept cryptocurrency.
Yeah. If you're listening to this show and you're wondering what you can do to forward freedom, liberty, peace, prosperity, and all that kind of stuff, what can you do? What can a regular Joe do? Well, just start asking. Hey, do you take cryptocurrency? Why not?
You're going to be most successful here in New Hampshire, where there are more people who can ask the same question, because that's usually what it takes. And we were so close to getting the Jamaican place there in Keene prior to the raid. Like, she was on board. Ian had given her some crypto. It was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But then we got raided, and that spooked a lot of people. The Corner News, which was the first shop there in Keene to take cryptocurrency, no longer has it. They had a Bitcoin vending machine for years.
Right.
But I can't say that I blame them for wanting to get out of it. It's spooky seeing how the government's going after all these people. And of course, that's exactly what people like Gensler of the SEC want.
Screw that guy.
Yeah, they want.
I don't like that guy.
No, he's absolutely horrible. And I have a story about him, so that's as good a time as any to get into it. There is a meme coin, because of course there is, about Gary
There's
Gensler.
more than one. Oh, wait, about Gary specifically?
Yes. The CEO, I keep calling him the CEO for some reason. The head of the SEC, he has a meme coin. It's an ERC20 token, and it's real.
Wait, it's not his coin, though,
No,
right?
no,
Somebody
of course
else
not.
made the
Yeah.
coin, but it's making fun of Gensler.
Right. I think it's called Gensler, and I'll get more into it, but you don't have to be the person to make an ERC20 token. All you need is some Ethereum. It's super easy. I wish I had thought about this idea because, like, I can't use cryptocurrency, but I wish I could use cryptocurrency and that I had come up with this idea because it's an obvious moneymaker.
Yeah.
Right? You just spend 0.001 Ethereum to make 10 million Gensler coins. And you sell them for 0.00001 Ethereum a piece, and you're guaranteed to make a lot of money. It's got no utility. It's useless. It's just an ERC20 token. I don't have very much respect for ERC20 tokens because I've made ERC20 tokens. Back when I did the Call to Freedom, we had a segment of the show called Libertarian Drama of the Week. Because libertarians love their drama.
Yeah, might as well spotlight it.
So I made an ERC20 token called WAH. That was the ticker symbol WAH. And what do we actually call it?
That was for when everybody cries.
Yeah, and I don't remember what we actually called it, but the ticker symbol was WAH, WAH. And we would award it to whoever won Libertarian Drama of the Week.
Nice.
And it's simple and easy. Then, of course, you have the useless Ethereum token, which is literally a useless Ethereum token that someone made, and they called it useless, and they pointed out that it was useless, and they made a website for it and said, don't buy this. It's useless. And what did the people do?
They bought it.
They bought it.
Of course.
Made lots of money. Yeah. Bitcoin, silver, of course, and also an ERC20 token. There's no safeguards against scams on the Ethereum blockchain. And given that Ethereum is centralized, I think they should have done something to prevent some of this.
Yeah.
Bitcoin Silver was the one that really comes to mind because that was the one that inspired me to start cryptocheck.org. And that was an organization that I founded when I still lived in the South that we checked out some of these ICOs because this was at the height of the ICO boom. You couldn't go online without hearing about an ICO.
Yeah, I remember that day. And I even lost an Ethereum because there was something and I read the white paper. I'm like, oh, that seems interesting. Sure, why not?
The only one I did not lose on was AirSwap. And most of the rest of the ones that I checked out turned out to be illegitimate, so I didn't invest in them.
I still have like a small bag full of like ERC20 tokens that, from back in the day that are doing nothing and probably worthless right now.
Probably. But it was super easy to do, and plenty of people did it. And Bitcoin Silver had a website, that they would sell you Bitcoin Silver. They made out like it was a fork of Bitcoin, but obviously it wasn't. It was an ERC20 token. You had to really look into it to find out exactly what it was. No white paper at all. Instead, all it had was a countdown timer saying, hey, look, the ICO ends, in 7 days and 9 hours or whatever. And what really got my attention was that when I revisited it the second time, there was more time left on the countdown than there had been previously.
Somebody bumped up the timer?
Yes, well, it was completely fake. They were trying to create a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you got to buy it now. So they did lower it to about 3 days.
A ticking clock. Oh, no.
But to my knowledge, they never actually ended the countdown. It was a Twitter handle, Bitcoin Silver 1 on Twitter. That was all they had. And if you go look at that handle now, all you're going to find there is lots of people tweeting that account saying, hey, I never got my Bitcoin Silver. What's going on? And of course, the account went dark. And there was nothing more I could have done to warn people about Bitcoin Silver being an obvious scam.
Sure.
But there were thousands of these. I thought that this would be the killer of crypto. I thought that we were going to see a repeat of the video game market crash of the 1980s, where the market was just ultra saturated with garbage.
Yeah.
And that's what killed video games in the it was what took them down in the 1980s.
I mean, I could see it killing maybe ERC20 tokens.
That would have been nice too.
Right. But I can't see it killing the technology as a whole. I think the technology is just too useful. There's too many use cases for it. It has the ability to, decentralized blockchains have the ability to replace bureaucracy as we know it.
Well, when I say killing the cryptocurrency, I obviously don't mean killing it to like $0 or whatever. Video games survived the video game crash of the 1980s.
Okay. All right.
And I would expect cryptocurrency to have survived this. I thought that it would chase away everyone in the same way that ET for the 2600 chased everyone away. Like, this is garbage, it's useless, we all bought into it, and it turned out to be crap. But that didn't happen, but ICOs died pretty much of their own accord.
Yeah.
People just got burned out, as far as I can tell. That was an interesting era in cryptocurrency history, though, and I remember it so well because that was when I became really active in the space.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned the difference between an actual white paper, like Bitcoin has, and a PowerPoint presentation, a sales pitch,
right?
Which is what almost all of these ICOs had. They weren't trying to solve a problem. They were trying to get you to invest in them.
Right.
And those are two very, very different things.
Yeah, it was certainly an acquisition of finance.
Yes.
For everyone involved. Now, did all of the folks who raised money by an ICO put that money into their ICO and actually create the product or service that you thought they would? No. Like, probably none of them did.
Some of them did. AirSwap did.
Okay.
They wanted to be the first decentralized exchange that allowed people to swap cryptocurrencies for one another.
Yeah.
The technology, being an ERC20 token, was very limited. You could only swap out ERC20 tokens for other ERC20 tokens or for Ethereum.
Right.
But that was still a relatively useful thing. And it was the forerunner of like Thorchain, which exists now and is the same thing. It's a decentralized cryptocurrency exchange that allows you to transfer one cryptocurrency into another cryptocurrency. And that's beautiful. That's what the cryptocurrency world needs.
Yes.
The next thing it needs is a way to get cryptocurrency without the KYC. That's the hurdle now. The on-ramps to cryptocurrency, because it's all well and good for you to take your Bitcoin or your Ethereum or your Litecoin or whatever to the Thorchain and swap it out for some other cryptocurrency or
Sure.
US Tether or whatever. But how do you get that first cryptocurrency to have it to exchange in the first place?
Yeah.
And at the moment, you are extremely limited. You're more limited right now than you have ever been.
Yeah, you have to KYC to turn your FRNs, your dollars, your US dollars into cryptocurrency, or the other way to get cryptocurrency is to earn it.
Yeah, but that's super rare, right?
It
That's,
is.
That
I
only
mean,
applies
maybe
to...
not for us so much, but for the general public, it is super rare.
I would say that applies at most to a few dozen people in the entire state of New Hampshire, and almost no one else has the ability to be paid in crypto. Like, I know in theory people can earn cryptocurrency as a way of getting it, but I don't even think that's possible for 100 total people.
I think it's larger than you think. But it's not large enough by any stretch of the imagination. The reason I think that is because you can go to Craigslist in any state and you can check the little box that says accepts crypto and apply, and then it'll filter by all of the Craigslist ads by people who will accept crypto for whatever they're advertising on Craigslist.
Okay, well, I don't use Craigslist anymore, so I wouldn't know that. It's good information.
It does exist. I look frequently because there are things I'm looking for. Specifically, I'm looking for an inexpensive rust-free vehicle.
Oh, you want Facebook Marketplace. That's one of the first things I learned in New Hampshire is that New Hampshire Craigslist is basically dead.
No, I'm not looking on New Hampshire Craigslist. I'm looking in other states specifically for a rust-free vehicle. New Hampshire is infamous for rust because they use salt on the roads. So I've got to look in places like, Seattle, Washington, or Florida, or places that don't either have winter or use salt on the roads, so that you can find a late model used vehicle that doesn't have a whole bunch of rust, and then bring it up here and undercoat it every year, and et cetera and so on.
And wait until it gets rust itself anyway.
So I'm looking all the time in other states. I'm looking in North Carolina, I'm looking in Florida, I'm looking in Seattle, I'm looking in, Louisiana, I'm looking at all these places, and I'm filtering by accept crypto. And I am surprised how many people have ads on Craigslist that claim they will accept cryptocurrency for their good.
Okay, that is awesome. I was not aware of that particular development. One of the best decentralized ways that I've heard of to acquire cryptocurrency that I knew about, right? And I love, but I wouldn't have thought about it in this context until someone pointed it out on the show, is mining cryptocurrency. That's the only way of turning US dollars into cryptocurrency in a truly, and what the hell is that smell?
Yeah, somebody's trash smells.
In a truly autonomous, anonymous way. And that's a wonderful thing. You may not, but you're not going to get a lot of cryptocurrency by mining it. You're simply not. And I say this as someone with a $2,400 graphics card. Now, I just use it for video games because I'm a PC gamer, and that's the sort of thing we do. And I could based on projections, I could probably mine several Raven coin a day or some other X16R token, which is CPU and GPU mineable, or Monero or something like that. Maybe 1 Monero every 2 weeks. So maybe at most having this thing running at 100% capacity all the time, maybe 2 Monero a month is what I would expect to get.
Yeah.
And that's a $2,400 graphics card.
Yeah, mining is, if you think about what exchanges do, it is one of the only, you kind of have to KYC because you have to give the electric company, your name and
right, but they don't know you're
thing.
mining.
Right. So in that respect, yes, you have to sort of identify yourself, to your electric company, but you can convert electricity into cryptocurrency. And in fact, I do this. So here's something you can do, you movers to New Hampshire. Cryptocurrency miners, I have some ASIC miners, so I'm limited to, a half a dozen cryptocurrencies I can mine. But I have some, and they put off a tremendous amount of heat.
They do.
And I'm using that to offset or to heat a portion of my house. And so the way I look at it is I'm transducing my USD that I pay my electric bill into some form of cryptocurrency, which I'm getting, some value back on, because if I don't sit on that cryptocurrency, I can certainly exchange it for something, that I think will retain its value or whatever. If the currency I mine, I don't think is going to retain its value, whatever it is, I can use one of the decentralized exchanges to exchange that currency. But I'm also getting a break on my electric bill in the winter, and my house happens to be heated by electricity.
The math doesn't check out on that.
So I'm getting two benefits out of doing one thing.
But that's not true. The math doesn't check out.
It actually does for me.
Not at New Hampshire energy prices.
Yeah, well, so last year was the first year that they doubled the electric bill, and I did not mine last year. But the previous 2 years I did mine. The first year I actually paid my entire electric bill all winter long by mining with my ASICs. And
you're the only one.
And I was up a couple $100.
Everyone else I've heard of who tries mining cryptocurrency like that, it's a losing proposition.
The second year, well, it's losing if you aren't using it for the additional benefit of the heat. Yes, I agree. But because I'm using miners to also heat my place when all I have is electric for heating, then I'm going to be spending that money anyway. So why not also mine a cryptocurrency? If my electric bill, I'm just throwing out a number, if my electric bill is $200 a month for just heating the place, why wouldn't I filter that $200 a month through some crypto miners to heat the place and get some crypto back, some value back? So
you also have ASICs, and I imagine you spent $5 or $6 grand a piece on those because ASICs.
No, I bought them used
pricey.
From a guy here in New Hampshire who works for a cryptocurrency. Here in the Shire. He replaced his, and so I got the benefit of him liquidating his used machines.
Okay.
So my acquisition cost was relatively low. I ignored my acquisition cost, by the way, when I calculate things, because
if
hardware is an acquisition cost.
If you're going to do this, you should do it because you believe in it, not because you're trying to make money. The problem with cryptocurrency in general is that too many people are doing it to try to make money.
Right. So all I'm doing is using mining as a dual benefit, and I'm really essentially just getting a big discount on my electric bill.
And it's the only way of acquiring cryptocurrency now that is truly anonymous and a surefire thing that doesn't rely on anyone else. You don't have to rely on some Bitcoin vending machine or whatever to not KYC you. You can just mine cryptocurrency yourself. And those are the on-ramps that we have now. Or you can go through Coinbase or Kraken or Binance, because local Bitcoins is dead. Yeah. Agora Desk no longer is operating.
Yeah,
so all of these decentralized peer-to-peer ways of acquiring cryptocurrency, they're dead.
And they just arrested the largest transaction dude on Local Monero.
Yes, they did.
Well, so.
Local Monero is probably going to go down eventually as well, or they'll revert to only the darknet version of the site. I don't know. It's ugly out there, man. And I hate it. But more about this Gensler meme coin coming up here from Forkfest. It is Free Talk Live.
Are you making sense to the boomer mindset? I'm Holland Cook from survivalspeech.com. 80 million baby boomers comprise 25% of the population and control most of the USA's wealth. As aging parents pass on, they'll control more. Boomers are 46 to 65 years old and regard themselves as midlife. They identify as neither young nor old. They're post-minivan and pre-retirement, and they don't like being called boomers. They think me. Many of the purchases boomer couples make are individual purposes. They've been experimenters all their lives. If you want their attention, tell stories and keep it simple. If something seems complicated, boomers can dismiss it as, I don't need this. And if you're looking for work, you may be applying to a boomer, so relate accordingly. From survivalspeech.com, I'm Holland Cook.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. On Sunday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang held candid and substantive discussions, according to the State Department. Blinken's on a trip to China that was delayed from earlier in the year after Washington deemed it not the right time, after it tracked and then shot down a Chinese spy balloon above the US. Washington set up Blinken's trip to China with low expectations. But Sunday's meetings did lead to an invitation from Blinken for Qin to visit the US and continue discussions. Patrick Falk reports.
It does seem as though very little can be achieved, particularly when you look at some of the pointed exchanges that have taken place in the lead up to this trip. By contrast, everything seemed relatively cordial when Qin Gang met Antony Blinken at the Daoyutai State Guest House in Beijing, but no doubt they will have had some very frank and tense discussions behind closed doors.
Uganda's government has condemned Friday's attacks on a school in the west of the country that is the worst violence seen there in more than 10 years. According to authorities, at least 40 students and 5 other people were killed. 6 students were abducted by the assailants, who are suspected to be affiliated to the Islamic State group Allied Democratic Forces. Leon Senenge reports from Kampala.
The despair as families collect the bodies of their loved ones. Many in Impondwe woke up to the horror of killings and abductions at a boarding school. The attackers set Lubiriha Secondary School dormitories on fire and looted food.
Some bodies are burnt beyond recognition, and some others, and we were still, in fact, accounting for the 6 set too, as they said that we were here.
More than 3 dozen bodies were discovered. Authorities say about 5 ADF assailants that orchestrated the attack may have fled into the Virunga National Park located in eastern DRC. They took with them at least 6 students. Leon Senyange in Kampala.
Sudan's armed forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have agreed to a new 72-hour ceasefire from Sunday. The nationwide truce follows reports of intensified fighting in the capital, Khartoum. Isaac Lokundo reports from Dar es Salaam.
The ceasefire, which began at 6 a.m. local time on Sunday, is set to last until the 21st of June. For weeks, Saudi Arabia and the United States have been mediating between the two conflicting sides. However, several ceasefire agreements that were brokered have failed to stop the increasing fighting across Sudan. Just a day before the start of the truce, an airstrike in Khartoum killed at least 17 people, including 5 children. The United Nations says at least 25 million people, more than half the population, require aid and protection. This new truce comes ahead of a pledging conference on Monday to try raise funds for the country's growing humanitarian needs.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live. We are here at Rogers Campground, and Mr. Penguin would like you to know that I am 100% wrong about something. It didn't seem like something I had said in the previous segment, so there may have been some sort of misunderstanding. In case I did say something to that effect, I did not mean to suggest anything about employment and small businesses versus corporations. I don't recall saying anything along those lines, but obviously small businesses are critically important to the United States, and they're critically important to the economy. So,
and in fact, it's my belief anyway that if government got out of the way, these giant lumbering behemoth corporations would go away.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, the Reformed Satanic Church, when I was selling cryptocurrency, I was getting to a point where I needed to hire someone to do some things for me in that capacity. Yeah. And I just kept doing it myself. But it would have made my life a lot easier to hire someone. Yep. But once you do that, there's all manner of new government hoops to jump through. And I mean, plenty of churches have people working for them.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have been that unusual, but man, does the government
Yeah, and if you try to do things even above the table and like subcontract instead of hire, right? You want to put somebody on a 1099 and offer them piecework. Hey, I'm going to pay you by the task, or pay your business, by the task, and I'll pay you for completing these tasks instead of paying an employee by the hour, right? Which is a smarter way, I think, to transact with other people and acquire services. But even if you do that, as people like Larkin Rose, who I think is supposed to be at the Porcupine Freedom Festival this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
As he found out, because he did this, and he got thrown in jail because him and his wife's business contracted people 1099 style, and they were like, no, you're an employer, you have to pay taxes, and they threw his ass in jail.
I was not aware of that.
Yeah.
Of course, all sorts of similar things have happened in regard to 1099s, employers and contractors and stuff, especially in the state of California, deciding that Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are employees rather than contractors.
Yeah.
When obviously they're contractors. But they don't even get paid a wage, do they?
If that's true, then how come cab drivers can still be contractors?
Yeah. Well, they can't in the state of California anymore.
No.
But it's all messed up. And because of that, like Variety, one of my favorite little screenshots is Variety celebrating this victory for workers' rights in California. And then like the very next headline is Variety lays off most of their staff because they can't afford to keep them as employees. And now they're not contractors. It's like, well, imagine how that happened. But it is a beautiful day here, and there are steadily more people coming in here.
I've seen a
at
bunch of
Forkfest.
RVs roll in just since we've been doing the show. I've seen a bunch of camps go up. Some folks are making some progress on the tent over here.
It's looking good.
For the thing that I'm throwing tonight. Thank you, guys. We appreciate you.
I'm excited to be here, and it's only going to get better from here, right?
Yeah.
And it's again, bittersweet for me because Saturday, Sunday are going to be fantastic days. Well, Sunday, not so much. Sunday's the day that everyone packs up and all that stuff. Looking forward, as usual, to the Soapbox Idol this year. That's the rant competition they have every year. Really looking
Are you
forward to
hosting
it.
or just participating?
I'm usually a judge. I've been a judge for the last 3 years in a row. It's really disorganized. It's not disorganized, but it's... I don't know how to describe it.
It's organic.
Yeah, it's not necessarily organic, but Carla waits until the last minute for some of these things because she's super busy with other stuff.
Sure.
And I usually find out about 12 to 15 minutes before the start of Soapbox Idol that I am going to be a judge. So I tend to just assume that I'm going to be, because it's usually myself and Jeremy Kaufman, and then we get a third judge as sort of rotators, an everyman, a straight middleman, not middleman, a straight man kind of thing, because we need someone who just kind of plays it straight so that Jeremy and I can do our things. Because it's so much fun. And last year there was a little bit of controversy surrounding Soapbox Idol, and it was very bizarre, right? Like
Extra soap?
Karlin Boryshenko, extra salt for sure. Karlin Boryshenko, I don't know her last name, I think that's her last name, gave a rant, and she got really upset with me on Twitter about Ian had invited her on Free Talk Live or something. She was like, no, thank you. I don't appreciate what Arya said during my rant or something like that. And I was like, I don't know what she's talking about, right? So, because I didn't remember which rant was hers. So I checked my notes because we do take notes during this. And I was the third judge to speak in her rant. And this is a rotating sort of thing where the first judge usually... is meaner, and the second judge is usually a little meaner as well. But when you're the third judge, and it's rotating, 1 minute you're the first judge, and then the next contestant you're the second, then the third. So we're constantly rotating which one is doing what. But if you're the third judge, it's critically important that you leave them on a good note, right? You don't want to have something negative be the last thing that they heard.
Right, yeah.
And that was my position. I was like, well, I was the third judge here, so there was no way I was even remotely critical. Then the video came out last year, and to say that I was the most vindicated that I've ever seen anyone be vindicated, right? Like, I didn't say anything negative about this rant. And the video's there on the Free State Project YouTube channel if you want to check it out. I'd highly recommend it. They are tremendously entertaining. It's just libertarians getting up there and ranting. usually for about 3 minutes. And we have a little countdown timer here. I may volunteer it for that so that they can actually see how long they have left, because usually someone in the front row like holds up cue cards and stuff. But here we have an actual LED countdown timer. I could just set it for 3 minutes. And,
instead of an hourglass or something. Right? Yeah.
So I'm thinking I'm going to offer that to Carla. It's a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. That's like the event I look forward to every single year because it's fun. And I like the libertarians. Here's some cheat sheets for those. Assuming I'm going to be judging like I have been the last 3 years in a row, pretty much as long as the event has happened. What I want is someone who speaks with passion and fire. I want to rant. I don't want you to give me a dissertation on the history of economics in the 18th century. I don't care about that. I want to rant.
You want somebody fired up.
Yeah. Get mad. One of the most interesting ones I've ever heard was someone ranting about how automobiles in the United States have been focus grouped and government tested until they're complete. There's 3 models of vehicle in the United States. There's hatchbacks, trucks, and sedans. And that's it. Yeah. And I never noticed it until, there's miscellaneous Jeeps and other stuff as well. Yeah. But I never noticed it until this guy pointed it out that he's right. The car variety, the vehicle variety in the United States, it's every bit as homogenous as North Korean haircuts, if not more so. Right? It's like the government has decreed us, here's your pre-approved body styles for your cars, and you may have one of these, but you may not do otherwise.
Yeah, you go back to as early as the 60s even, cars were unique.
Yeah.
Different companies, even if they were under the same umbrella, like GM had a bunch of sub-companies, right? Pontiac and Chevy and, all that kind of stuff. And, you could see differences in each of their models of cars. And then at some point, I think probably in the mid-'80s, all of a sudden you would get, there was, I'm trying to remember, the Chevy Chevette.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, the Chevy Chevette was also the Pontiac something or another, right? But it was the same exact car. Different symbol on the front of it. You know how there's the Volkswagen symbol and the Chevy symbol and the Buick symbol and the Pontiac symbol. So it was the exact same car. So you could get parts for either car and they were the same. So GM was doing this thing where they were making the exact same model of car and marketing it through multiple sub companies under their GM umbrella. And they continue to do that. And you'll see things like the Dodge Neon was the exact same body and suspension and every engine and transmission and everything as the what was it called? It was the body style they came that looked more like an old school panel van. I can't remember what they called it, but so they basically just all they changed was the fiberglass exterior. Everything else was exactly the same, and so auto companies have gotten smart about this stuff, and they figured out how to do this. Toyota was kind of infamous for doing that with the Tacoma and the 4Runner back in the mid to late 90s. The Tacoma and the 4Runner were the exact same guts and suspension and transmission and engine, just had a different body plopped on top of it and bolted on.
That's one of the reasons I like my 20-year-old Eclipse, right, is it is distinct. And even then, it is not. That's around the time when the sports cars in particular, the Mustangs and the Corvettes and the Camaros, they started looking like crap, in my opinion. They stopped looking like sports cars and they started looking more like sedans. And that's only continued on since. I recently sold my Ford Fiesta to the owners of the Mighty Moose Mart. And Chris used to be on the show here on Free Talk Live. Probably going to return at some point in the future. But anyway, so I sold my Ford Fiesta to him. But as I look around, everyone assumed it was a Ford Focus. And I owned one of these. I can't tell you what made it any different from a Ford Focus or any other sedan that you happen to see. And this was something I had never thought of. And a lot of the judges, I don't think he did very well in that particular rant. I gave him a 9 because that was original, it was new, and he was angry about it. How dare these automobile manufacturers take all of this possible variety and condense it down to 3 different styles. Yep. And that's what I like. It was great. It was fiery. It was energetic.
Some emotion into it.
Yeah. Of course, last year, a kid named Jefferson won. He did a speech about how coronavirus... And also, pointer, if you mention COVID-19 or masks, I will automatically deduct 5 points from your score. I am so sick of hearing about COVID-19 and masks.
Yeah.
But he did talk about COVID-19, but in a different take that I hadn't heard before. I could have assumed it, but here was a literal 10 or 11-year-old kid talking about how the government lockdowns and all of that ruined his life and separated him from his friends. And we knew that sort of thing had happened, but here was one of the victims of that talking about it, and that made it different. It wasn't some entitled libertarian go, "How dare the co-op force me to wear a mask?" Like, well, you could have gone elsewhere. Mo did a rant on this a few years ago that he kept saying, what do you believe? And he was shaking his fist. It was a little too manufactured on the angry note, but he was spot on with this take, which is, you libertarians, you say you're all about private property.
Yeah.
But here's these business owners saying, don't come in without a mask. And your first instinct is to violate their private property rights by going in there without a mask. So there's a bit of a conflict here. So which one of these things do you believe?
Right.
And that was a good rant. It was interesting. But he left right after it was over. Like, as soon as he finished speaking, he was like, all right, I'm out. So he wasn't even there to hear the scores. I think I docked him some points for that.
Yeah.
It's like, whose line is it anyway? It's not a serious competition. And I think that may have been the confusion that we had last year.
It sounds like a lot of fun.
With Carlin and some others, right? Like, the points don't matter.
Yeah.
We'll give you whatever points we want. And then at the end, Jeremy and I and whatever judge will sit around going, well, who do we want to win? Like, we're corrupt. We are straight up completely corrupt. Jeremy gave someone points last year for bringing him a beer. And I took away some points for someone for, why did I don't remember why. It was completely arbitrary and capricious, right? Was it because they didn't bring me a beer?
Maybe.
I don't recall. Or because, man, I really wish I could remember. But it was just for some completely silly, nonsensical reason. I'm taking 2 points away from you because you did this and I didn't like it. So it's all fun. It's all fun and games. And there's no reason to get upset, people. It's just a good time.
It occurs to me that since the wedding has already gone on yesterday, and that tonight is the main big day of Forkfest, that we're not going to see the second annual mini golf tournament.
I don't know why we can't.
Well, would have to do it during Porcfest.
Why can't we do it tonight?
Well, we'd have to do it late after dark. Because
Why?
I'm doing my thing, and I got to prep for that.
You're not doing your thing until like 8:30, though.
Right, but like I said, I got to prep for it. I got a van full of stuff that still needs to go in that thing.
Right.
After the tent gets set up.
The mini golf tournament usually takes place at like 4:30, though.
We'll see. We'll see.
You don't think it would?
We'll see. It depends on Mr. and Mrs. Forkfest.
I got to deal with my dog because someone untangled her rope, and now she has way too much slack to actually get out there and into the street and into other people's property and stuff. So that was doing that. So I did not catch anything that you said, but it's all mostly taken care of now. So
Mr. and Mrs. Forkfest is what I'm calling them, Matt and Nikki.
Oh, okay.
Depending on what they're doing.
Well, technically, Jay and Shallon have the original claim to that. They were the first to get married at Forkfest.
Okay, but I'm still talking about the mini golf tournament here.
Right.
The winner of last year's tournament is not here this year. That's the B-Man.
Who's the B-Man?
He had the honey bus. We called him the B-Man. Remember, he was the guy who showed up specifically for Forkfest. He was selling, fresh, organic honey.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
I will take your word for it, though.
Well, he won.
Okay.
The whole tournament. He came and kicked everybody's butt. And then, he's like, no, I'm not going to be there this year. So we can't even challenge him to the crown. So
I mean,
we
he probably
would have
beat us anyway. I'm terrible. I haven't gotten any better.
I haven't either, but it was fun.
We
had fun, and I was looking forward to that. But we'll see. I hope it happens, and it can happen whenever. I'm not, that tore up about it. But
we would likely have a smaller crowd this year, I think, because there's been less planning going into it. Last year, by the time of the tournament, there were 20
Nikki
or 30
was sort of the
right?
champion of that too. So I think she was the one who wanted to make it happen. So I'll default to her guidance if it's going to happen or not.
I'll check with her and see what she wants to do, because that was a lot of fun, and I was expecting at some point to do Apocalypse #2, right?
Right, yeah.
That was the name of it.
Yeah, the four roosters of the Apocalypse.
And it was a lot of fun. Usually the penultimate night is the top night of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, is usually about of Forkfest, not the Porcupine Freedom Festival, because the Porkfesters start coming in.
Right.
And I love the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but they changed the vibe. And this has been less true now that it's been decentralized. But like previously, it was the Saturday before. That was the night when the magic happened. And the Sunday, that was the night right before the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And that was when the Pork Rangers would be here and they would be riding around in their golf cars. And there's just something about the way they did it that seemed entitled and authoritarian. And I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it was unnerving. And this was the same year that one of them complained that she didn't have jurisdiction to say something about someone doing something that she didn't approve of. So the vibe would just change almost immediately. And it was a very curious thing to experience.
Yeah. My reaction to that was the year that they stopped having the Pork Rangers. I was actually up here, and I was trying to organize Ranger Block.
I remember that. People were caught blocking.
Ranger Block. The Porkfest exclusive version of Cot Block.
Yes, exactly.
It was necessary. They were out of control.
Yeah.
They had gone full authoritarian at that point, and they were embracing it. It was unpleasant.
Nobody
My
didn't like that.
suggestion was that we should form Forkfest Rangers, and like during Forkfest have the Pork Rangers block the Forkfest Rangers, and then during Porkfest have the Forkfest Rangers block the Porkfest Rangers. So,
Forkfest Rangers have
adversarial system.
The Forkfest Rangers would have absolutely no authority. And we had Dennis Pratt on the show a few weeks ago, and he took a lot of credit for decentralizing the Porcupine Freedom Festival, but I got to be honest, Forkfest is responsible for that. As far as I can tell, everything I've seen, and I was here for it, suggested it was the decentralization of Forkfest and the success of Forkfest that led the way in decentralizing the Porcupine Freedom Festival. And that could be, maybe I'm as wrong to take credit for it as Dennis was to take credit for it. Maybe it was just this organic thing. I don't know. But I was here, and it seemed to me like offering people an alternative that was successful was what caused the Porcupine Freedom Festival to be like, you know what? Forkfest went just fine. We had a huge crowd that year. That was the year right before FUD. That was the year right before we moved it to After, and it was tremendously successful.
Oh, wait. You mean a little bit of competition went a long way?
Yep.
Wow, weird.
And I wasn't the only one who...
It was competition, but it was also good leadership. So I've got to give credit to both things. Forkfest created the niche, but then Dennis maneuvered Porkfest into the niche.
That's a really good way to look at it.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think that's really accurate. But we all noticed the vibe change. That Saturday night, I swear, man, it was magical. Ian mentioned to me that he had a dream last night about me, him, and his dog Jazzy. Jazzy is no longer with us, and
I missed.
I don't remember what all of the details were about the dream, but it was pretty. I can imagine that the reason he had that dream was because of all the time he and I spent together at Forkfest 3 years ago and 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Because Jazzy was there with us the whole time.
Sure.
So I suspect that was related to it. But those Forkfests will always, in my memory, be remembered as like the best. And the last one where it was before, and then the year that FUD performed at Forkfest, magical years. Like truly magical years. Going to go down in my memory. Those will keep me warm during my prison sentence. Unless I'm sentenced in Alaska, in which case nothing is going to keep me warm.
Didn't they decide that they were going to keep you at least in the New England area?
Well, the judge said that he wants them to keep me in the New England area because having people close by encourages good behavior, because that they threaten to take away your visitation, then you're more likely to behave well, apparently. But the Bureau of Prisons is under no obligation to take the judge's word, right?
Okay.
They can do whatever they want. And they're
so
probably...
the judge is basically suggesting.
Right.
Okay.
And they're probably going to send me to somewhere far away from New Hampshire. And I didn't think this was going to be true. Someone wrote a letter to Ian and I recently, someone who's in federal prison. He was like, hey, oh yeah, you're going to survive this, but it's going to suck, right? Mm-hmm. You're high profile, and the guards are going to go out of their way to screw with you.
Yep.
I was like, no, man, come on, high profile. That's silly. There's no such. I'm absolutely not such a thing. But I talked to a few of my attorney friends about this because that's something I didn't expect, to have friends who are attorneys that I can talk to.
Yeah.
And sure enough, they reiterated the same thing, that, yeah, and it's going to suck. The guards are going to screw with you, and you're probably going to get, to some extent, other inmates screwing with you. So luckily, they all said the same thing, that if you have friends who are attorneys, they are more likely to leave you alone because, like, oh, she's connected, she's got powerful friends or whatever.
Right, yeah.
But and they don't like it when people say negative things about them.
Yeah.
Which I don't intend to write about my experience in prison while in prison anyway. To me, that's obviously a bad idea, right? This is not the time for activism when in prison. The more activism you do, the worse it's going to make your life.
That being said, I think you'll probably find some other inmates that you can either befriend or help.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can definitely do activism in jail. I did a lot of activism in the year and 7 months that I've done so far. So I've actually done more time in total than you're looking at.
Well, to be fair, when I say you can't do activism, I mostly mean anti-state activism. Like, you can't antagonize the guards in the state in any sort of... I mean, you can, but it's probably not a good idea to do that.
You can't antagonize them past a certain point. They're just like any other people. There's some people who enjoy a good debate, who are guards.
Okay.
And in one case, I actually won that debate. And I say that I won that debate because the guy became an anarchist and quit his job.
Oh, wow. I call that a win.
And actually, he spoke at Keenvention one year.
Okay.
That
was that the guy who came to the Porcupine Freedom Festival at one point as well? No, that was a former TSA agent, maybe.
Oh,
I think he was TSA. So I'm thinking about someone completely different.
I drove the TSA people crazy one year. We went out there and we were protesting, and I was saying things like, "Why do you want to put your hands on children?" Calling them all pedophiles, basically. And the cops would come up and they'd be like, "Please stop doing that." And I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, okay, no problem, I'll do that." And as soon as they'd walk away, I'd be like, "What's the matter with you, you pedophiles?"
I love the shirts that say it's not gay if it's TSA.
Yeah.
Those are some of my favorites. I can't go through TSA without getting felt up. Like, it's guaranteed at this point, because they only have two buttons when you go through the booth, male button or female button. And if they hit the male button, then my bra's going to set it off.
Right.
And if they hit the female button, then other things in other places are going to set it off.
Sure,
So, I'm guaranteed every time I fly, I'm going to get felt up by the TSA, for sure. So I make a show of it. I enjoy it, damn it. And it's fun. Like, okay. I don't...
See, that's the time when I want to identify as female. And I may start doing that. If you're going to feel me up, I'm female. Have a woman do it.
And then, have a loud, boisterous enjoyment of the thing as it develops. There's more coming up here from Forkfest. Hour number 3 is next. It is Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live.
You give someone an ounce of liberty and they'll go around abusing it and harming everyone else with it.
If we legalize guns...
People will be shooting people everywhere.
Right.
If you legalize prostitution, people will be having sex on the street corners. If you legalize drugs, we'll have heroin vending machines in the streets. We've heard it all on Free Talk Live. They take it to the most absurd, illogical extremes, and you're absolutely right, Alexander. It's okay for them to have freedom.
Yeah, you can give them a gun. They won't go around shooting people. But watch out with their neighbor, because you give them a gun, they'll go around in a rampage around the city killing everyone.
But yes, they can be trusted, and apparently the government can be trusted too, because magically, we only elect the best of the best, the cream of the crop. The bureaucrats that are administering these programs are the upper echelon of society, the most trustworthy individuals.
Oh, yeah. Sometimes when I squint, I swear I can see a halo above their heads.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
The latest episode of Free Talk Live continues with Hour 3 up next after the news here at listen.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. On Sunday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang held candid and substantive discussions, according to the State Department. Blinken's on a trip to China that was delayed from earlier in the year after Washington deemed it not the right time, after it tracked and then shot down a Chinese spy balloon above the US. But Sunday's meetings did lead to an invitation from Blinken for Qin to visit the US and continue discussions. Patrick Falk reports.
It does seem as though very little can be achieved, particularly when you look at some of the pointed exchanges that have taken place in the lead up to this trip. By contrast, everything seemed relatively cordial when Qin Gang met Antony Blinken at the Diaoyutai State Guest House in Beijing, but no doubt they will have had some very frank and tense discussions behind closed doors.
Uganda's government has condemned Friday's attacks on a school in the west of the country that is the worst violence seen there in more than 10 years. According to authorities, at least 40 students and 5 other people were killed. 6 students were abducted by the assailants, who are suspected to be affiliated to the Islamic State group Allied Democratic Forces. Leon Senenge reports from Kampala.
The despair as families collect the bodies of their loved ones. Many in Impondwe woke up to the horror of killings and abductions at a boarding school. The attackers set Luberiha Secondary School dormitories on fire and looted food.
Some bodies are burnt beyond recognition, and some others, and we were still, in fact, accounting for the 6 set too, as they said that we were here.
More than 3 dozen bodies were discovered. Authorities say about 5 ADF assailants that orchestrated the attack may have fled into the Virunga National Park located in eastern DRC. They took with them at least 6 students. Leon Senyange in Kampala.
Sudan's armed forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have agreed to a new 72-hour ceasefire from Sunday. The nationwide truce follows reports of intensified fighting in the capital Khartoum. Isaac Lokundo reports from Dar es Salaam.
The ceasefire, which began at 6 a.m. local time on Sunday, is set to last until the 21st of June. For weeks, Saudi Arabia and the United States have been mediating between the two conflicting sides. However, several ceasefire agreements that were brokered have failed to stop the increasing fighting across Sudan. Just a day before the start of the truce, an airstrike in Khartoum killed at least 17 people, including 5 children. The United Nations says at least 25 million people, more than half the population, require aid and protection. This new truce comes ahead of a pledging conference on Monday to try raise funds for the country's growing humanitarian needs.
From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks, looking in more detail today at this week's state visit to Washington by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It hasn't even started yet, and already Indian TV is awash with breathless live reporting from the US Capitol. The Indian leader will address a joint session of Congress for the second time. The two countries will paper over differences on human rights and Russia in order to focus on a growing bilateral economic relationship and a security relationship designed to counterbalance a rising China. Bob McMahon is with America's Council on Foreign Relations.
This is a very important relationship, too important for there to be any sort of public scolding of Modi for his domestic record, let's say, and it will really be playing up this economic side. Last year, the trade between the two countries is estimated to be $191 billion. That means the United States is the largest trading partner for India. I don't think there's going to be a great deal of rancor over India's non-aligned stance on so many issues. I think you're going to see them be unapologetic about their ongoing relationship with Russia and their sort of absence of condemnation of the invasion of Ukraine. But by the same token, there'll be a great deal of talk about the closeness of this relationship, especially vis-a-vis China.
But there will be criticism of the Biden administration for that and for overlooking the Indian leader's crackdown on his political opponents as well ahead of elections next year. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks.
And the main news again. The US and China work on improving ties as Secretary of State Blinken meets face-to-face with his counterpart in Beijing, searching for the children abducted in Uganda. People are mourning the death of more than 40 students and 5 adults by assumed Islamic State fighters, and another ceasefire in Sudan for 72 hours from Sunday. But will this one hold as attacks escalated in the capital Khartoum just before the truce began? There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. That's the latest from Feature Story News. Caroline Malone reporting.
Following morning reports indicating that Philadelphia High School for the Performing Arts student Samantha Bylum deals with really weird social pressures on a daily basis, Onion reporters met with the 16-year-old dance student who described feeling regularly alienated from her peers for extremely bizarre reasons.
If you're not up to date on the latest urban street art or Esperanza Spalding albums, the other students will eat you alive. It can get pretty brutal. Just the other day, everyone cut class to go watch the $1 Million Quartet musical at the Forest Theater, but nobody told me. Now I'm the only one that hasn't seen Lance Guest's rendition of Folsom Prison Blues. It's humiliating.
According to Bylum, the school year shows no sign of letting up as she continues dealing with the everyday stresses of auditioning for the school's production of My Fair Lady, keeping up with the latest punk Afrofusion dance groups, and not having enough fishnet sleeves to wear throughout the week.
Honestly, I don't know how the other students deal with it.
Keep checking theonion.com for more as this story develops.
This is the Onion News Network.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and you're not invited to join us. You are invited to join us. It was almost out of habit that I almost gave out the number and all of that stuff again. But you are invited to join us. But you got to be here to hang out with us at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. We're here. Today is the last day of Forkfest. But tomorrow begins the Porcupine Freedom Festival.
Indeed.
Which is a bigger and more attended event, and people are steadily, here come the porta potties now.
Oh, the big truck or trailer filled with porta potties.
Now, obviously, there's close to like 3,000 people coming to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, and the bathrooms at Rogers Campground just aren't sufficient for that amount of volume. So they have to bring in others. I'm curious to see if they finished filling up the pool yet.
Yeah, I noticed that there's 2 pools. There's like a kiddie pool and then a regular pool, and only the smaller one has any fluid in it.
Is there a hot tub?
There is a hot tub.
I was not aware. But I would be surprised if they're going to bother just because it's so chilly this year. You'd have to be certified insane to go swimming in this.
See, that's why they need to get the hot tub up.
The hot tub, I could see.
I'm all about the hot tub.
But I don't see even the wildest of children being willing to swim in this. You could die of hypothermia swimming in this.
Yeah.
So anyway, we're talking about the SEC chair, Gary Gensler. I want to talk about this story because it's hilarious to me. I wish I could use cryptocurrency. I wish I could acquire cryptocurrency because I would love to acquire Gensler coin or whatever it is that they're calling it. SEC chair Gary Gensler, of course, has united cryptocurrency through the hatred of a common enemy. As these things tend to go, right? We hate Gary. I don't hate Gary Gensler, but I wish he would screw off because he's doing everything in his power, as far as I can tell, to destroy cryptocurrency.
He needs to get a real job is what he needs to do.
And he's doing a very good job of destroying cryptocurrency. Now, a meme coin is rubbing salt in the wounds. I really doubt that he cares about this. This is from Blockworks, and they're going to post it. They're going to write about it in this ultra crypto friendly way. But I sincerely doubt that Gensler knows or cares about this meme coin.
I don't know about destroying cryptocurrency. He's certainly tarnishing the public's view of cryptocurrency.
Well,
he is.
He's also working to put people in prison for using it, though, isn't he?
I know the FBI is and FinCEN is, but I don't think the SEC is a regulatory body. I think they just fine people. But and gut them and put them out of business like they did.
Either
Library.
way, it's a ridiculous alphabet organization. Needs to go away.
It is. So good Gensler is the coin. GENSLR is its ticker symbol. Is more than doubled over the past month to outperform practically the entire crypto market. And it's easy to see why. I would love to acquire some Gensler if I could. Not just to give Gensler the middle finger. And I don't know in what way that's giving him the finger, but my gut tells me it is.
I was going to say, like, here's what I don't like about Gensler coin. That I have to say his name, and that it gives
it's good Gensler.
And it gives, like, just even the name, though, gives him more attention. Everybody's saying it gives him more attention. And I think that's counterproductive.
Well,
then again, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and maybe giving him attention is not a bad plan in terms of paying attention to what he's doing and
That's a solid
the
point.
evil of what he's doing.
That's a solid point.
Like, even congressional officials have called this guy up and been like, hey, man, what are you doing? This isn't right. You got to stop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing.
Yeah,
has
he's
come of that
obviously
yet.
a power mad psychopath on a quest.
But this is good Gensler, and that's very different from bad Gensler. Bad Gensler is head of the SEC. This is good Gensler, and it's more than doubled over the past month. As I said, more than
Gensler.
More than $100 billion has been wiped from crypto's total market value over that time, melted by the SEC suing both Binance and Coinbase, which we all saw coming, and they're not going to stop.
Yeah.
Right. They've made it clear that they're going to target anything and everything as they sink their ravenous tendrils and claws into cryptocurrency.
Which only illustrates that government is not out to protect you. It's not out to make your life easier. It's not out to do you any favors, because what it's doing is it's preventing people who happen to live in the United States of America from engaging in new technology.
Yeah. Where were these guys when FTX was happening, right? When FTX was doing all this shady stuff with Alameda. You would think if the government is
They were
going...
staking out the Free Talk Live studios is where they were.
True. Yeah, and that timing works out.
Yes.
But, like, if you think that the government exists and is going after cryptocurrency in order to protect the masses or whatever, why didn't they do anything about FTX? Why did FTX play all the way out until it exploded and collapsed of its own accord?
Yeah. Well, specifically, it collapsed because they showed their balance sheet to some other exchange in hopes of getting a loan, and the other exchange said, oh, my God.
That was Binance, wasn't it? Was it Binance, the other exchange?
It was an Oriental guy. I don't know his name. I think he was Chinese. He's one of the really big players in the field.
Okay, Binance is owned by a former Chinese guy.
Okay.
I don't remember his name.
A former Chinese guy?
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to be Chinese for a while.
Well, he's
I started out at the bottom. I was born a poor black child.
Wasn't that a Devo
But then
song?
I heard my first Manavani record, and I said, these are my people.
Wasn't that
so
a Devo
I decided
song?
to become white.
I think I'm turning Japanese.
No.
It's different than Chinese.
I think
but-
that's a different band.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Devo covered it.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe
so
they did.
Bitcoin and Ethereum both down, one down 5%, one down 9%. I don't find it particularly relevant when articles even mention cryptocurrency being up or down because one, they don't give any time frame. It's up. It's down from what it was a week ago.
Right.
It's up from what it was 3 years ago. You're not giving us a time frame with which we can actually assess these things fairly and accurately. And it's sort of meaningless to just say it's down. That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, cryptocurrency goes up and down depending on your timeline. If you look at the graph of cryptocurrency, it's just a matter of how zoomed out you are, whether cryptocurrency is up or whether it's down. Yeah. But even worse, these 18 tokens that have been labeled securities in the SEC's recent lawsuits have collapsed between 11% and 41%, one of which is Dash, which we are promoting here on the show. Obviously, we do that in exchange for 32 Dash per month by the decentralized autonomous organization that owns Dash. And the SEC listed Dash and several others. Gensler refuses to say which currencies and tokens are Ethereum tokens and which ones aren't. I mean, which ones are securities, and which ones aren't. Yeah. He will say that Bitcoin isn't a security and Ethereum isn't a security, but he won't give us the metric that he's using to make those assessments.
And these government agencies disagree with even themselves on some of these definitions, and they won't get together and work to provide some sort of a definition to, well, everybody who wants to transact and build businesses around blockchain technology. So they're doing a disservice to everybody by losing what's known as the first mover advantage to everyone who resides in the United States of America who's interested in doing this stuff or creating business. They have to go now outside of the U.S. They've made it a toxic environment for business here in the United States of America, losing the first mover advantage and doing a disservice to everyone listening and everyone that resides here in the United States of America.
And even if you leave the country to do your thing, they're going to expect you to pay taxes on the business that you had to leave the country to start because they wouldn't let you have it.
It's sickening what they're doing, and Gensler is on the record, or someone in the SEC is on the record as saying that they don't want to provide clarity to the rules because then people would know how to skirt the rules. They're not there to regulate,
they're there to obstruct.
Right.
Yes. But you would expect that they're going to have some sort of law that I really wish that dude earlier had not untangled this dog because now she just keeps going out into the street because she's got limitless rope to play with. Anyway, they refuse to provide direction. They refuse to say what you can do to be legal because then if you know how to be legal, then you also know how to be illegal, right? It tells you exactly what to do.
Right, and so for now, of course, since they've provided no definitions, they leave everyone who transacts at the mercy of them. They can at any point claim, oh, you did this one transaction, that's completely illegal, even though they provided no clarity, no definition, and no direction on how to proceed in a proper manner. So again, another disservice.
Render the laws unenforceable because they are unconstitutionally vague.
Right. And also keep in mind that none of these things that they're levying against these either cryptocurrency exchange or cryptocurrency traders, none of these things were written into law through the approved lawmaking process, right? That is going through Congress and getting all that kind of stuff. These were not put into law in that fashion.
No, they were just arbitrarily created by the SEC. Yeah. And all of this means that if the current market cycle wasn't 80s movies, crypto diehards would probably consider Gensler the love child of Biff Tannen and Hans Gruber. I don't know who that second one is.
Hans Gruber?
Yeah, who is that? What movie?
Alan Rickman.
What movie?
Die Hard?
Okay.
Remember the
I haven't seen Die Hard since I was like 5, maybe?
He was like the main bad guy in Die Hard.
I do know Biff.
I want to die.
Biff Tannen, absolutely a gross, evil dude, and he seems accurate to Gary Gensler, a big dummy sitting in a crumbling ivory tower hell-bent on destroying crypto by refusing to apply anything but the ancient Howey test, which is the way they used to determine what was and wasn't a security. And I don't remember the specifics of the Howey test.
I've heard of this.
But he's not applying it. However, Good Gensler is an ERC20 token that launched in April, and since the beginning of June, it's up about 111%. Not surprising at all. Once upon a time, in a parallel universe, there was a man named Good Gary. He came to defeat his evil Earthborn doppelganger, states the Meme Coins portal page. And it doesn't give an actual link to where that page actually is. What sort of sloppy journalism is that, dude?
Welcome to 2023, I guess.
I guess, but man, you're writing about this cryptocurrency token. You're writing about this ERC20 token and you're quoting it and you don't give a link to their actual website? That's sloppy. Like all meme coins, and I'm torn on meme coins, right? I don't know how to feel about them. They both do good and bad things for cryptocurrency. Dogecoin, of course, the original meme coin, got trounced, as far as I can tell, by Shiba Inu. And I don't know. It's got its ups and it's got its downs. I guess it gets people into cryptocurrency, but it gets into them for reasons I don't necessarily approve of. Like they want to make a profit off of buying Pepe coin or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Instead of getting into it because they care about it. But then I wouldn't be trying to make a profit if I were to acquire good Gensler. I would be doing it to give the middle finger to Gensler because in whatever weird way in my head, doing so is a middle finger to him. He hates crypto, so here's a cryptocurrency named ERC20 token named after him. And I hate Ethereum and I hate ERC20 tokens.
Pretty much the same thing that the Federal Reserve did to Andrew Jackson.
Yes.
By putting him on the $20 bill, which is just the biggest. Oh, we're on regular radio, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Yes, it's just the biggest screw you.
So, like all meme coins, there's obviously not much point to Gensler beyond jokes and the very peculiar brand of camaraderie that comes with holding a bag together with anonymous internet strangers. It's never going to do anything, it's never going to be anything, and it's probably never going to really make you any money, but it's funny, and I wish I could acquire some. This particular project mostly amounts to Gensler superhero memes, a Telegram group, and a crypto-positive manifesto. It's steeped in fantasy lore that describes a scenario in which a well-meaning Gensler travels between parallel universes to destroy our bad Gary Gensler once and for all. And I kind of like that. I wish I could use Telegram so I could read these stories. That sounds amusing, right? Like this narrative people are weaving about good Gary going out like Rick from Rick and Morty to defeat the evil Gensler that we have in our universe.
I wonder if evil Gary has a goatee like Spock did in Star Trek.
That would be the way to... unfortunately, we can't change what evil Gary looks like. We can only change what good Gary looks like.
Yeah.
But if Gary doesn't have a goatee, then you should give good Gary a goatee.
Is that why South Park did that a number of years ago in their episode about this?
Yeah, because Spock grows a evil Spock has a goatee.
And evil Cartman was, even though he had a goatee, was really good Cartman because, well, Cartman, the regular Cartman, was the evil one.
Yeah, because it's Bizarro Cartman. It's not evil Cartman.
He wasn't evil yet at that time.
Well,
that time he was just a jerk.
Universe Cartman.
It wasn't until Scott Tenorman that Cartman truly became evil.
Yeah, that's true.
So here's the story. Good Gary, that's Gensler, Gensler, was the founder of the Intergalactic Crypto Defense League and a champion of crypto. When the ICDL headquarters received an urgent call that the Galactic Banksters and the FUD Spreader, that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt, were planning to destroy the crypto universe with fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Thank goodness they clarified that right after I did. Good Gary knew he had to act fast. And that's all there is to this story. I like it. I wish they even included an actual screenshot of the web page, but did not link to the actual web page. That is absolutely disgusting on their part. So that's the story here. It's an ERC20 token, so Ethereum.
No, I'm saying what platform is the article on?
Oh, blockworks.co. It's just some website I've never heard of before. I just happened to read about this story. I was like, that's funny. I want to talk about that on the show. And, it's interesting. There are better ways, I think, of dealing with this, right? But I don't know what they are.
Yeah.
Right? On the ground activism in this note gets you landed in prison for 18 months.
So it seems.
Yeah. And the alternative is to write your congressman. And why would you waste time and energy doing that? Right?
You're going to become pen pals.
If you're not a bank, your congressman doesn't care what you think.
No. Instead of doing that, may I offer the alternative of punching yourself in the crotch for 3 hours? It'll be more effective and only a little bit more painful. So tomorrow, we just had someone come up and ask us about Forkfest.party, and that was an interesting experience. I mean, we do have signs all over the campground. You can find them here and there, signs planted in people's yards. Someone replanted our signs, so thank you for that. As I mentioned earlier, someone untangled my dog's leash. It's not actually fixed to anything, right? For the most part, it just lays here on the ground, and she's usually good, so she doesn't wander beyond where she's allowed to wander. However, someone untangled it, so there was no tension whatsoever and no mental indicator of where she was and wasn't allowed to go.
Yeah.
And she got tangled up in the signs and pulled them down earlier, and someone replanted them, so thanks so much for that. But anyway, we do have a Forkfest sign here in the ground. We have one hanging up as well.
Big old banner?
Well, we have a banner hanging up as well, but we have also the sign there.
Yep.
And there's another one up there at the hill that I saw earlier when I was walking my dog. And it's so nice to see bumper stickers that are representative of Free Talk Live and Forkfest and things like that, right? It's nice to walk around and be reminded continually that these are our people and they support us and they love us.
Yeah, it is. There is we'll call it a hardcore group of Forkfest people who participate in the Forkfest every year, and who either arrive early or stay late depending on when the Forkfest was going to happen. It's flipped a couple of times now.
We have some steel forks and we have some plastic forks.
Yeah. It's true.
That was sort of my concern with Forkfest happening after the Porcupine Freedom Festival last year and the previous year, is that it seemed like it was mostly just like the Keene and Manchester libertarians hanging around, which is cool and fine, but I would like to see people from outside of the community that I see on a daily basis.
Well, and shout out to that guy Will, who came up here specifically for Forkfest.
Yep.
And couldn't stay for the Porcupine Freedom Festival after checking out Free Talk Live. So
there have been some of those throughout the years, and we don't always know when people are here just for Forkfest and when they're not.
Yeah, unless they announce it themselves,
right?
And, tell us that, oh yeah, I'm only here for you guys and here for just this, right? But we don't know.
Right. You can look at the sticker and see how long they're here for, but that's only a general indication, and that's only on their vehicle. They don't walk around with the sticker saying how long they're going to be here. But it is a beautiful event. It's a beautiful time, and the Porcupine Freedom Festival begins tomorrow. I look forward. I haven't even looked on the schedule to see what all is happening this year.
Yeah.
Which I need to, because there's usually a few events that I want to check out. Someone speaking that I want to check out. Of course, there's so much controversy this year that it's going to be interesting to see what happens with RFK Jr.
I've decided that I'm not going to that.
Yes, same.
I decided that a long time ago. I just don't know if I ever mentioned it on the show. So I'm mentioning it now. I'm not going to watch RFK.
What's the RFK Jr. thing?
He's going to give a speech.
And he's taken 3 pre-canned questions. You had to submit these questions in writing.
Oh, it's only 3
in
questions?
advance, and there's only 3.
I didn't know that. I knew that they were taking questions in advance, and somehow someone somewhere was going to decide which questions were going to get asked. So there will be no Q&A by the libertarians who go to see him after his speech. It's canned questions in advance so that him and his writers, his handlers, can figure out how to answer them in advance. This is the wrong way to go about winning over Porcfest people.
Is any other candidate sending us a message at all?
Yes, Vivek is going to be here. I've heard, I haven't checked, but I know once upon a time people were saying that Tulsi Gabbard was going to be here.
I heard yesterday that she canceled, but that's unofficial. I just heard it in a Telegram chat. I don't know if it's, if it's hearsay or not.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah, same. Aaron Day is also, he was offered a spot, but he wanted Saturday at noon or something like that. And dude, that's a tall order. Any spot on the Saturday, that's a big deal. That's the top tier speakers there, and you want noon on the Saturday? I don't blame Dennis at all for saying no. Look, you can't have that spot.
That kind of feels like somebody's way of saying, no, I don't want to go there. Right? I only want to go there if I can get the best spot. And it's come on, you're full of yourself, pal.
Well, I would argue that the best spot typically goes to the rant competition that occurs late night on Saturday night. On the peak night, usually it's the last event. I would say that.
Soapbox Idol?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that's usually the top tier spot, and I think it's usually the best attended. But that's the spotlight on libertarians, right? Allowing libertarians to get up there and talk about libertarian things, and it's amazing. Absolutely love it. Of course, we've already talked about that, and I can talk about that endlessly.
Well, and I've said over and over again that if any candidate of any weight wants to learn about Porcfest, learn about libertarians, just come here.
Yes, but RFK won't do that.
Get a site. Come in with your security team. They're armed. We're armed. So who cares, right?
RFK does.
Well, okay. So that.
That's how these career politicians are.
That in and of itself should be illustration enough for everyone to go, yeah, this guy is full of it. If he's not willing to meet us on our terms.
Well, that's exactly it.
I could care less about him.
And that's my problem with this is libertarians thought, oh, look, we're being recognized by an official big-name candidate. Now it's
big whoop.
but we're not. But he should be bending his principles to compromise with us. Instead, we're bending ours to compromise with him. What does he have that we want? Nothing. He's a politician. He's got some empty promises.
He has followers.
He's got that, and he's got the ego boost from having a big-name politician speaking here that makes other libertarians cream themselves. Oh, guys, we're official. We're big now, and it's great. There's more coming out here from Forkfest, so stick around. We've got a guest coming. It is Free Talk Live.
I've been told no in many different ways.
I give you an order and you're going to obey it.
George, you can go this way. You can't do that and you have to leave here.
You cannot bring signs into the rally.
Walk with me.
Well, I'm comfortable here, actually. Whoa. Hey. Who do you think you are? Excuse me.
There is no video or audio allowed in this office.
No, I have work today.
You ain't going to make it.
Wait a minute.
Hey! Oh my God! Unbelievable!
Why are you running from me? Because you're scared me. What am I being detained for?
You're being served.
What is this?
You're being served.
What is this? Bureaucrats have a funny way of telling people no.
That's the sound of the men working on the chain.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Caroline Malone. On Sunday, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and his Chinese counterpart Qin Gang held candid and substantive discussions, according to the State Department. Blinken's on a trip to China that was delayed from earlier in the year after Washington deemed it not the right time, after it tracked and then shot down a Chinese spy balloon above the US. Washington set up Blinken's trip to China with low expectations. But Sunday's meetings did lead to an invitation from Blinken for Qin to visit the US and continue discussions. Patrick Falk reports.
It does seem as though very little can be achieved, particularly when you look at some of the pointed exchanges that have taken place in the lead up to this trip. By contrast, everything seemed relatively cordial when Qin Gang met Antony Blinken at the Daoyutai State Guest House in Beijing, but no doubt they will have had some very frank and tense discussions behind closed doors.
Uganda's government has condemned Friday's attacks on a school in the west of the country that is the worst violence seen there in more than 10 years. According to authorities, at least 40 students and 5 other people were killed. 6 students were abducted by the assailants, who are suspected to be affiliated to the Islamic State group Allied Democratic Forces. Leon Senenge reports from Kampala.
The despair as families collect the bodies of their loved ones. Many in Impondwe woke up to the horror of killings and abductions at a boarding school. The attackers set Luberiha Secondary School dormitories on fire and looted food.
Some bodies are burnt beyond recognition, and some others, and we were still, in fact, accounting for the 6 set 2, as they said that we were here.
More than 3 dozen bodies were discovered. Authorities say about 5 ADF assailants that orchestrated the attack may have fled into the Virunga National Park located in eastern DRC. They took with them at least 6 students. Leon Senyange in Kampala.
Sudan's armed forces and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have agreed to a new 72-hour ceasefire from Sunday. The nationwide truce follows reports of intensified fighting in the capital Khartoum. Isaac Lokundo reports from Dar es Salaam.
The ceasefire, which began at 6 a.m. local time on Sunday, is set to last until the 21st of June. For weeks, Saudi Arabia and the United States have been mediating between the two conflicting sides. However, several ceasefire agreements that were brokered have failed to stop the increasing fighting across Sudan. Just a day before the start of the truce, an airstrike in Khartoum killed at least 17 people, including 5 children. The United Nations says at least 25 million people, more than half the population, require aid and protection. This new truce comes ahead of a pledging conference on Monday to try raise funds for the country's growing humanitarian needs.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live from the final day of Forkfest here at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. I don't have the list of amplifiers in front of me. If I was good at my job, I would have pulled that up during the break just now, which I could have done, but I didn't. But I do want to tell you about the amps program. You can find that at amps.freetalklive.com. That's our Patreon. And that's the best way, one of the best ways to support the show. If you value the ideas of liberty, recently the Heavy 100 was released for 2023, and we fell a spot, believe it or not, from number 24. We are now only the 25th top radio show in the United States, so we lost a spot there, but we're hoping to reclimb back up. And I'm not really surprised. 2022 was an interesting year for talk radio, but if you want to support the show, amps.freetalklive.com is the best place to do it. And I don't remember why. There was some way in my head that the Heavy Talkers, the Heavy 100 was linked to the amps program that I was going to get into, and I've already forgotten what it was as I was talking.
Yeah, it's not.
Well, no, in my head it was. There was some way to segue from one to the other, and I have no idea what that was. Anyway, amps.freetalklive.com.
Help us advertise, market, and promote. We may be able to climb that list more easily.
Yeah, it only takes $5 per month. That gets you in. You can donate more than that if you want, but $5 per month is all we ask, and you do get a number of amp-only perks. Ooh, I never did post that video. I'm going to have to do that. I have a video that I recorded with Bonnie and Nikki that is a reaction video to a voicemail that someone left me, and it's extremely humorous, and I meant to post that and never did, so I'm going to have to do that tonight. Anyway, that's amps.freetalklive.com. You can get that exclusively at amps.freetalklive.com. With you today, it's Arya and Rich. Captain had to step out previously, and we're joined by Corey Haig, who is the author of Liberty Uncensored, the Freedom Papers. Is that right? Welcome.
That's right. That is our newspaper that we started back in December, and so we're on our 7th issue now. I brought the 4th issue here to Porcfest because we had an article written about Porcfest here in the Freak State Project, and so I thought that would be appropriate. The Freak State, the Free State.
Oh, okay. I heard Freak State Project, which we have been called.
Well, that's applicable to some degrees as well, right? Like,
I'm a believer in letting your freak flag fly.
I'm pretty freaky.
We've got the Satanist flag flying behind us and the LGBT pride flag right there. It's starting to get freakier than that, right?
I love naming things, and of the things that I've at least helped name in New Hampshire, I think one of my favorite is the Reformed Church of Satan.
Yeah, well, it's the Reformed Satanic Church. The order actually is important because of the Satanic Church and the Church of Satan. Wait, maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember now. Anyway, the Satanic Temple that's what I'm thinking of. It doesn't matter. So yes, we do have the Reformed Satanic Church here in New Hampshire, and I am the high priestess of that, and performed a wedding yesterday.
Nice.
In that capacity, and that was a lot of fun.
Nice.
So anyway, we're joined now, as I mentioned, by the author of, or the owner of Liberty Uncensored. So tell us more about this paper, and is it only print, or is there a digital version for people? How does this work exactly?
Sure. So we do a online digital version that people can get for free at libertyuncensored.news. We also do distribution of free issues of the physical print to all the places where we have volunteers, with access to the paper that do distribution in different areas across the country. Like I said, we started in December, so it hasn't been running for that long, but we have already reached many, many, many thousands of people with physical prints, with online version copies that we distribute with friends like Ernest Hancock. And Ernest always gets the first page, so you're always going to be able to read from Ernest Hancock in the newspaper.
Awesome.
And we have a lot of other heavy hitters in the freedom community that contribute to this. We've had David Rodriguez, we've had Kenny Palorentano. A lot of people have been involved in the paper just right from the start, sharing information that could assist in creating more liberty in this world, or helping people find places where they might be more free, like New Hampshire and the Free State Project, but also so many other topics that we can use to enhance our lives, from health and well-being and wellness in general to, like David Rodriguez, offering a way for our children not to go to mandated, psychopathic school systems, but rather to find their graduation through alternative means, and still be able to access if they want to go to college, or be able to use a degree for something, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I noticed that one of the contributing authors was Etienne de la. Ian always said his name, and I never did.
Etienne de la Boissy Square.
Yeah, that's it. he's not a fan of me in particular. He's not a fan of Ian either, but he's definitely not a fan of me. He considers me to be controlled opposition for being the satanic tranny that ruined liberty in New Hampshire. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how he characterized it, but he's not a fan. And if I'm controlled opposition, will someone tell the FBI that? Because they're putting me in prison in 8 days, and I would appreciate not having to do that.
Yeah.
But we are at the Free State Project's festival. Well, not yet, but it will be going on tomorrow. And you do have an article here about the Free State. Where is Liberty Uncensored based out of?
So we are completely remote. Everybody that volunteers, whether they're editing, whether they're writing a piece, whether they're distributing, whatever part they play, everybody's volunteer, and we do everything remotely. We don't have an office. We have very little overhead. And so all the money that comes into this paper and into this project goes into spreading information to as many people as we can possibly reach. We don't have a base of operations anywhere.
So what sort of articles does your paper run? Is it just anything and everything related to liberty? Because I know Ernie Hancock, who you mentioned, I didn't know he wrote for the paper. He's always involved in a lot of projects, some of which I would say are a little bit zany, like the spaceship project. I can't remember what that was called, but
SpaceX.
No, that was Elon Musk, a different crazy person. But you've got to dream big, right? And that's one of the things I love about Ernie is that he puts no limitations whatsoever on his dreams, and magical things can happen when one does that. So, what sort of things would Ernie write about when he writes for Liberty Uncensored?
So every month we do a primary topic. So every issue is topical to something. This issue that we have in front of us is all about community and how we can develop different types of communities to create more freedom in the world and what it even means to be a community. So we dive deep into each issue of the paper, something different. We've done, for Black History Month, we did Black History Revisionism, talking about how the story is being rewritten to fit the narrative that the controllers want it to look like and want it to be. We've done...
Well, I'm sure the fact that you even did a Black History, paper offended a large number of the conservatarians.
I really hope that many people were offended because I forget who said that quote, but it's I don't care whether they love me or hate me as long as they pay attention.
Fair enough.
And so as long as people are looking at it, they're getting a perspective that most likely they don't get anywhere else. And since we're delivering to the wide population, we don't discriminate between what type of person or what house we put the paper on. We put it on every single one, and we hope that a lot of people get inspiration from it.
Sure, I mean, a cell is a cell, right? It doesn't matter to you if they're going online to rant about it. They're bringing eyeballs to it.
Exactly. Yep.
So that's
There's
one
an
of the
issue to that, though, which is if you take rhetoric, which is the original one of the 3 R's. It wasn't writing; it was rhetoric. And there's three things you need for convincing rhetoric, and those are logos, logic, pathos, feeling, and ethos. And ethos is basically to be perceived as a person of goodwill. So you don't want to damage your ethos, because once your ethos is damaged, what happens is if you say a thing, your listeners are less likely to believe that thing. It's like when George Bush or Joe Biden or Donald Trump says something, and we're like, okay, we can cross that off the list of things that might be true.
Yeah, so we avoid that by everything that goes into the paper. So anybody anywhere can submit for the paper, and if it doesn't go in the paper, maybe we'll put it on the Substack, right? So we want to get people's voice out there for sure. And if you are writing something that is explicit, like if it doesn't have any basis in truth, or if there's nothing to back it up, one of the examples I say is like, if you want to talk about the flat Earth, you have to convince the editors of the paper, at least, that you have something to back it up. There's some place where the truth might exist there. If you can't do that,
reasonable.
If you can't do that, then there's no reason for us to put you in the paper, because then you're just talking the way you might talk to anybody anywhere without anything to back up what you're saying. Right. If you have something to back it up, if you're going to cite scientific studies, if you're going to really put forward a strong argument, then we'll put it in there. But if you're going to talk about flat Earth, we're probably going to put in something about round Earth in the same paper. But we don't really do that. We don't really do that so much. So we've talked about like anarchism. We did a paper on anarchism. We did a paper on agorism. We did Black History Revision. You know, we try to keep it topical in places where.
Are you doing a Pride Month article this Pride Month episode? Or,
no, at least
episode?
not. At least not this year. And we're just getting started. So like, maybe next year we'll do that.
Okay.
But what we're doing right now, the coming up issues. So the last one that we did was Unsung Heroes, and in that one we heavily focused on our friend Johnny Hurley, who was shot by a cop in Arvada, Colorado.
That happened during a Porcupine Freedom Festival, I think 2 years ago.
Yep, and he was a friend of many of us who actually work on the paper. And
so I say that happened at. That's incorrect. It happened during, concurrently with the Porcupine Freedom Festival happening.
Yep,
is what I meant. Sorry.
And so like people like Johnny, who was shot in the back after he killed a mass murderer. He was shot in the back by a cop who watched the whole thing for 11 seconds before he shot Johnny.
Yes, he showed up reporting to a shooting, and he shot the guy who took out the killer, right? So,
and then he got a paid vacation, and then he moved out of state. So there's not really much going to happen to that guy. But so for Unsung Heroes, people that have done amazing things, that was our last issue. And then our coming up issue that's going to come out soon. Actually, I'm not going to say what it is. You're going to have to find out. But we always keep it topical, and we try to talk about things that are relevant to kind of the time that we're putting out the paper, too. So when we get to September, what are we going to talk about? Obviously, we're going to be talking about 9/11. We're going to have Richard Gage. We're going to have a bunch of information about that. But also, we're going to expand that into the concept of what is a false flag? How has government interfered with the peaceful general population throughout history? You know, a lot of different stuff around that. So we try to cover a lot of topics around our main topic as well.
Now, I really like Breaking Points and The Hill, and I remember them both reporting that two of the 9/11 terrorists were CIA assets. And that this was
only two.
Well, they found evidence for two. Is the thing is, you know, we can, and you don't have to know you're a CIA asset to be a CIA asset. If you're working for a guy who's a CIA asset, you're a CIA asset, but you don't know it.
Fair enough.
So.
The one that always gets me about September 11th is how they found the passport of one or two of the hijackers in the rubble after 9/11. This fire that was hot enough to melt steel beams, as they say, and that destroyed multiple Rolls-Royce solid steel jet engines, left a paper and plastic card passport just fine. Readable.
Yeah. Well, and then I lost a lot of money on that because I invested in a company that was recycling Saudi Arabian passports into brake shoes because they have to have really high heat resistance. And the company went broke because they could not reproduce those results.
That's tragic.
You know.
Well, you know,
I want to start a scientific journalism scientific journal whose slogan is often imitated, never reproduced.
Well, you know, the elephant in the room when talking about 9/11 is always World Trade Center 7, right?
Right.
So a building
the one that people forget about.
Right. Everybody thinks that planes hit two buildings in New York City, but the thing is that there was three buildings that fell. No plane touched it, and it had an office fire, which never took down a steel structure, high-rise building in history. All of a sudden came down at the exact same moment that the two Twin Towers came down.
Right after the owner of the building said something, recorded as saying, you know, there's been such a huge loss of life today. Maybe we should just pull it, which in demolition terms means demolish it. And then shortly after that, minutes after that, the building was demolished.
And since it turned out to be considered two separate terrorist attacks, the owner of the World Trade Center, he got his insurance to pay out twice.
And the FEMA report of September 11th, and as well as the 9/11 Commission report, both of them completely omit any mention whatsoever of Building 7. And that's why when you go online, people are like, oh, remember the 2 towers? And you're like, hey, no.
The
2
3
planes
towers.
hit and 3 buildings went down. I'm like, what? There wasn't 3 buildings. They look at it and they go, I guess there was 3 buildings. What? Maybe the government's lying to me. You think? Like, even physicists, I think his name was Stephen Jones, who Brigham Young University came out and look, physics doesn't lie, right? If there's no way for jet fuel to melt hot enough to melt steel, then it didn't happen. Like, even under the best laboratory conditions, they can't raise it to that temperature, then that's definitively not what happened. That doesn't mean that there was controlled demolition, certainly not. It doesn't mean any of these other things. It could be that there was a high amount of, I want to say it was iron oxide iron oxide was the leftover from thermite. They created some scenario in which the paint that they used could chemically become thermite during an ignition or collapse. So I don't remember exactly what it was, but they presented some.
It's impossible because they use nanothermite. So nanothermite has to be built from the atomic level up. You can't do it the reverse. So there's not something that will decompose into those reddish gray powder materials they found. It wouldn't decompose into that. You actually have to build it the opposite direction. So
now,
it's actually impossible.
Thermite, as I understand it, and tell me if I'm right about this, because it sounds like you've got some scientific. My understanding is that ordinary thermite is basically aluminum filings burnt in the presence of iron filings.
Aluminum filings burnt in the presence of iron filings.
Generally a magnesium strip. That I think is what we did in high school chemistry for thermite. I know we did thermite. I'm pretty sure that's
in high school. Man, your high school was hardcore. Mine
I went to a military academy, so
ours didn't let us near anything fun. Like, they wouldn't even let us have like bleach, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm older than you are. And,
yeah, no doubt.
And your generation got completely screwed on education.
In many ways.
We did it to you, and
you didn't do
I
anything.
fought it as much as I could. Sorry about that. On behalf of my generation, we destroyed the schools. Well, we let the boomers destroy the schools. We failed.
Boomers
to
are going to
stop
boomer,
them.
right? I mean,
boomers are going to boom.
Yeah,
there's nothing you can
stop
do
them.
about that.
No.
I don't know about the filings, but you definitely have to use magnesium, because magnesium's the only thing hot enough to actually ignite the final material. So I mean, however else you're going to get to it, you have to use the magnesium. But in the end, I mean, what we're talking about is how that material could have been produced in the first place, and it wouldn't have been produced by any decomposition of any kind of material. They would have had to go the opposite way with it. So they built nanothermite.
And that's not how you do it. You get refined aluminum and you get refined iron, and you're combining them. You're not separate. You don't have to separate. You don't have to combine chemicals with chemicals from which they were previously separated. You can just buy them both at a chemical store and mix them up at home.
Yeah, but after you use it, the decomposition process, you're not going to have leftover material that it represents nanothermite, because you have to build that from the ground. It's not like regular thermite. And so because we found that, it proves that they used explosive material inside of the building. You're not going to find nanothermite on a friggin' jet plane.
Well, I want to move away from 9/11 here, because I think it's safe to say that none of us believe the government line. And
that's my position. I have no opinion on what did happen.
That's exactly my position.
Except that it's not what the government says.
Right. I don't know what happened that day, but whatever the government said about it is definitely not what actually happened. So what else do you have planned for Liberty Uncensored? You mentioned the possibility of, the Pride episode next year. I'm not really a huge LGBT Pride kind of person, but I like frustrating conservatives. I like making them feel like, oh God, we've lost control of the liberty movement that we never had control of in the first place, because libertarians aren't conservatives, and I love reminding them of that. But that's the only reason I have the LGBT flag right there, is because to give the middle finger to the conservatives, especially now when the conservatarians are really on the rise and pushing and trying to make society more and more conservative. And you mentioned September 11th being an 9/11 being the focus of a September issue. Do you have any other plans for the specific, and how do you just hope that there's coincidentally enough people writing about September 11th, which I imagine from libertarians, it's really easy every September. There's probably hundreds of libertarians producing articles about 9/11. But on other subjects, do you have to like put out some sort of mailer asking for, articles about this topic or that topic?
So I after over 10 years in the community of freedom and truth movements and going to events, I've met thousands of people. And so basically I reach out personally, or I go through the other editors and writers and stuff, and we look for people who are interested in writing for the paper. But we also put out shortly before we so we're always a month ahead. And so before we start putting the paper together, we reach out to community in various ways, different Telegram channels in certain places, and we say, does anybody want to write for the paper? But then also it's open to the public. So if you want to write for the paper, you can send a document to us, and we can find a place for it. If you're trying to find out what the next issue is going to be, the best thing would get on our Telegram chat. I think that's just Liberty Uncensored on Telegram. You can find it that way. But we put out all the information on there. So if you want to write for the paper consistently, get on the Telegram chat and you'll find all the right information that you need.
I love projects like this. One of the earliest things I did in the Liberty community was write for a collection called V2, The Voluntary Voice, which was just a collection of a bunch of libertarians that I had never even heard of, obviously, writing about topics that I had never read about. And it was that was the first time I heard of the term anarcho-capitalist. And I thought it was just completely nonsense. Like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. So I sat down one day to write about why it was the dumbest idea I'd ever heard. And like 2 paragraphs in, I realized that I had to be an anarcho-capitalist because nothing else was actually consistent. And I would never have come to that realization. I probably would have at some point, but I came to that realization perhaps more readily and more quickly than I would have without the existence of this compilation of libertarian writers. So I love it when things like that happen. And I would never have bought this book if I hadn't been one of the people who contributed to it. I didn't buy it. I was gifted it because I was one of the contributors. But I would have never read it if I hadn't been one of the contributors. So that's a value. Giving libertarians a platform that they can use to get their voices out there, I think encourages them to hear the voices of others.
Yep. And actually, I'm apolitical in every way. I don't care what part of the political area somebody exists in. If you have something to say about how to create more freedom, whether at the individual level or the community level or the national level or the world level, I don't care, as long as what you're saying can be actionably applied to create more liberty, more freedom in that environment. So I'm personally as purist anarchist as you can go. I think all government is an abuse of people, but we surrender certain rights when we have a government so that we're protected as a unified force. But just like our original Constitution, the Articles of Confederation say is that the body of the people is the militia, the body of the people is the government, and we create this entity called government to manage affairs so that it makes it simpler and easier to do something that affects everybody simultaneously. But is government actually necessary? I believe absolutely not. Is government a good thing in the end? Absolutely not. But if I don't care if you're libertarian, I don't care if you're Democratic, I don't care if you're Green Party, I don't care if you're Republican, I don't care what you are. If you have something that is an actionable item that we can use today to create more freedom, that's all I care about.
That is awesome. And that's libertyuncensored.news for those who want to check it out. Libertyuncensored.news. And you said look up Liberty Uncensored on Telegram. Thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today. And this was Chris Haig, the owner.
Corey.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was looking right at your name, too. Yep. Thank you so much, Corey. And I don't know where I got the Chris from. But anyway, I wanted to wrap up this segment by telling people about... I've been watching people come in this whole show, and now little Zoe's has arrived. I saw them packing up off and on throughout the week. I love bin of Goldbacks has arrived over here. So people have begun to arrive in real numbers now, like people that I've been waiting to see all year. So I can't wait to go out there and do that. You can come hang out with us because we are here for another week until the 25th. Check us out online in the meantime at freetalklive.com. That's freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes to vote on. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by the Treasury. In fact, that's exactly how we got this sponsorship. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers